the morning. You got me up, all cause you need to talk. To 4 in the evening, wanna break up, say that you've had enough. I'm tired of talking, again and again, argue about everything. You are my darling, this kiss and make up, I know you wanna touch. You call me every night, call me every day, I just wanna get you alone now. Trust me when I say, we gon' be okay, we just gotta boom bada boom ba. I don't wanna fight, you know that I'm right, baby let me talk to your body. We gon' be okay, hear me when I say.
Say yes. 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 Oh Lord. Say yes. Say yes. Oh.
He has to make at least $200,000 a year.
Are you on drugs?
No.
On a dating site. For women, they're the only people
What
who
if you
have
like
a
big
category called big, and then they put a caveat behind it, and beautiful. Why is this big woman called beautiful but not slim and beautiful, medium and beautiful? It's only big and beautiful. Why are we
BBW?
attaching beautiful to this heavy set woman? Why? She should be able to be judged like everybody else on her beauty, regardless of her size. But because we're catering to her. Now, when you go and look at a man, it doesn't say big and handsome.
I see your point. Actually, wait,
Well, where's the
big and tall.
confirming?
No, don't
the
even
nigga's
go
tall.
there.
Fire! The kosher clinician.
Remember those days, those L's, I couldn't sleep right now. I get paid, vacay, I'm staying B-side. Breaking the blues over steak, I gotta eat right. You could be my peace sign. I don't need that energy around me. I just need sun, you're so cloudy. I wake up good, you're so grouchy. Please get from around me. When the truth don't work, you start telling lies. Thought you were down to ride, you weren't down to ride. Caught switching, you were picking sides. Don't blink, caught slipping like a slip and slide. I was shooting dice till I got a nosebleed. Money on the floor, can't get cold feet. Took a L, should've put it in the offering. Lord, forgive me for my sins, don't know of me. Scary thoughts, I got scary thoughts. Lost control, now I'm taking charge. Breaking bills, friends breaking off. You could be the youngest, I'm the dawn. Kiss the ring, nah. In the scene like GOT. Stay awake, don't sleep. Like Jon Snow, get R.I.P. Remember those days, those L's, I couldn't sleep right now. I get paid, vacay, I'm staying B-side. Breaking the blues over steak, I gotta eat right. You could be my peace sign. I don't need that energy around me. I just need sun, you're so cloudy. I wake up good, you're so grouchy. Please get from around me. Just me, myself, and I'm my favorite threesome. The cars I drive by, I never lease them. They say if you can't beat them, then you join them. That's no option, I don't join, I always beat them. I was fake, you had to find me. Now I'm on beat, skating like I'm grinding. L hit me, said it's all about the timing. If you want the vision, get to spinning. My mama told me trust in God, it's never limits. Now I'm on the scoreboard, running up the digits. I put in work, you know I'm up to get it. Early bird gets the worm and the Yankee fitted. Like whoa, bags under my eyes and you know. Won't complain, I'm tired, I'm on go. For that grip, 10 toes till they swole. For that grip, 10 toes till they swole. Remember those days, those L's, I couldn't sleep right now. I get paid, vacay, I'm staying B-side. Breaking the blues over steak, I gotta eat right. You could be my peace sign. I don't need that energy around me. I just need sun, you're so cloudy. I wake up good, you're so grouchy. Please get from around me. starving, I mean, till my belly full. From up north, we get cold, you need a heavy coat. Scared to end up on the shirt before it's centerfold. Devil on my back, target on me, deadly too. Play the keys, don't tweet. It's not peace, don't speak. 24, no sleep. This is real, no tweet. My bros for life, can't break this link. Family on my side, baby stay around me. I don't want no combo, I want checks. I don't want the second, I want this. I'm all in my ass way, I'm a wreck. I've been moving like a hot mess. I don't want no combo, I want checks. I don't want the second, I want this. I'm all in my ass way, I'm a wreck. I've been moving like a hot mess. Want that combo, better know you'll need a check from me. Can pay to play, the sun still won't get a cent from me. I mix the fit up with the salt like it's a remedy. I mix it up inside the pot, watch it drip while it drop. Time to take it to the top. Chips all in the middle like it fall, no I won't flop. We gon' pop like a soda can top. To me this is nothing, call my bluff and I won't stop when I flex. I don't want no combo, I want checks. I want the checks, yeah. I don't want the second, I want best. I want best, yeah. By any means, that's a triple threat. Yeah, this is getting bigger, I might flex. I don't want no combo, I want checks. I don't want the second, I want best. I'm all in my ass way, I'm a wreck. I've been moving like a hot mess. I don't want no combo, I want checks. I don't want the second, I want best. I'm all in my ass way, I'm a wreck. I've been moving like a hot mess. I hit record a drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets. When I'm performing, never boring, now you can't afford it. Champagne Perrier, Finnish friends on my face. Looking like I'm from the D. D's no Cartiers. Pockets deep, bro. I can make it in my seat, bro. Do you, I'm doing me, bro. Making noise, use a beat, bro. Whoa, I press the button and the doors go off like. That money clip was not a new, now looks like. Whoa, upgrade her diamonds, now her girlfriends are like. Whoa. Neighborhood on the scene, neighborhood on the strip. Neighborhood be the name, neighborhood no crib. Neighborhood that's me, neighborhood that's Nick. Neighborhood do the dance, neighborhood do the deal. Okay, thought I'd never make it like no way. I'm the real deal, no role play. My days off, that's no days. No, I hustle hard, young rose. E be the shooter, that's cocaine. Those on the deals, that's brose. Got no pay, yo, no say. Okay, this the news, tell them read it. Been the one since the fetus. Don't sleep on me, Tempur-Pedic. That's a no. Spending dope for no reason. Got a ball head, Mr. Cleaner. Heard the big bags overseas, then we gon' go. Whoa, I press the button and the doors go off like. Whoa, that money clip was not a new, now looks like. Whoa, upgrade her diamonds, now her girlfriends are like. Whoa. I press the button and the doors go off like. Whoa, that money clip was not a new, now looks like. Whoa, upgrade her diamonds, now her girlfriends are like. Whoa. Tunnel vision when I hit the holly. Working on that cause my mind is on an island. Told my babies I'll be homeless, so don't stay up. Breaks my heart to see them sad, so I won't wait up. Need it all that's mine, I need it now. I lost my patience the same week I lost my smile. My baby pressed me, said I'm acting like a child. I took some L's, can lie, that really brought me down. I'm so antisocial, but I guess it's type selective. Swear I'll make a change, but for now I just can't help it. Only trusting God in these cards that I've been dealt with. I'ma do my job, time to grind, time to know. They know, 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 they know. Pedal to the metal, they know. Gone and I won't let up, they know. I'm not so fed up, they know. Say it for the record, they know. They know, they know, they know. Yeah, they know. Pedal to the metal, they know. I'm not so fed up, they know. Why you never sign? You sign when you go live. Stuck inside that bubble, never ever go outside. You don't know you know computers, you're a tech guy. Back against a wall, you gon' fall or you gon' ride. I feel the pressure, foot to the pedal. My dogs, they fed up, my squad won't let up. Those sneakers CDG, hot on step on. My money yoga, the way it stretch on. I change locations to change the weather. Know when that rain come, got my umbrella. And when my day come, my name gon' stay up. Yeah, I know, I know, I know. Pedal to the metal, they know. Gone and I won't let up, they know. I'm not so fed up, they know. Say it for the record, they know. They know, they know, they know. Yeah, they know. Pedal to the metal, they know. I'm not so fed up, they know.
Fire for your mind. The kosher clinician. Yeah. I told you guys that faith is one of the 7 steps to male optimization. And when men are seeking resolve in a time where so many people seem to be unresolvable, faith can be that deal breaker, or it can be the antecedent that can help them become the better versions of themselves. But it appears that in modern times, there are so many men that are sympathizers, and that's pun intended, no pun intended, that assuage negative behavior associated with our women. Many of our women have developed thinking errors in the context of minimization or the minimization of behavior, where they say, because they don't want accountability, that only God can judge me. They'll say that only God can judge me because they fail to look within themselves and they fail to do the self-introspection to become the better versions of themselves. But the question remains is, if faith is part of men hard driving them becoming better versions as it relates to them having mental wellness, why do so many modern women bellow the sentiment that only God can judge me? Is it fair to say that only God can judge them? Or is it fair to say that human beings can judge you as well based on the lifestyle that you live? Too many times in our world and our culture, because many say that it's gynocentric or gynocracy, they'll say that you can't judge me, and they'll still say, yes, Lord. But the problem is that while so many are saying, yes, Lord, many are not willing to do the work to look within themselves and change the trajectory. Here recently in the past, Jamal Bryant was one of the adversaries that more or less aggrandized women's behaviors. But the problem with Jamal Bryant and many others like Jamal Bryant is that he doesn't really care about the women that he talk about, but it appears that it's only just a hustle game. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this show as I bring it to you live from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State. And I need you guys to remember this, as there are 7 steps to male optimization. If it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. How has faith been more or less sabotaged by modern women when they bellow the sentiment that only God can judge me and still say yes, Lord, while they remain in sin? Be well.
We're about to get it cracking on tonight. We're about to get it cracking. We had a great show last night talking about the Medusa complex. We talked about the dark triad. And part of talking about that dark triad was narcissism, psychopathy, but also we talked about Machiavellianism. It could be safe to say that many modern preachers in modern times actually use the concept called Machiavellianism to lure many of our women in a state of delusion, but also in a state of deception. I told you guys that there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized, and understanding faith and how to utilize faith as it relates to them being better versions of themselves is paramount to the functioning of a man. Kevin Samuels talked about something before he passed away. He talked about something called the Christian feminists. And in process of talking about the Christian feminists, it more or less posits and more or less explains the different types of women that more or less exist in church, and they say one thing, but it means something totally different. In the gospel, it says that they worship me with their mouth, but their hearts are far from me. And so we need to have these conversations because many men have begun to leave church. They don't see any relevance to church. And I submit, I did grow up in church. I grew up similar to Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal holiness. Do I live out the mandates of the gospel like I did in my 20s? No. Do I need to more or less go and repent of some areas in my life? Yes, I'm human. But the purpose of this show is not necessary to talk about me or to shame churches in general. There are some good churches that are striving to do the right thing. They're not perfect by any means. They're not perfect. But there are some noble churches that are striving to do the right thing. They're striving to do the right thing. They are trying to do the right thing. And sadly, the bigger churches or the mega churches make the smaller churches that are trying or striving to do the right thing look bad. And I'm not saying that all mega churches are bad either, but many mega churches are very carnal, they're very secular, and they tell people what they want to hear. But many of you men have heard the sentiment, or you guys have heard the concept that only God can judge me. They all say that to more or less minimize their behavior. It's always a minimization of her behavior when it comes down to doing something wrong, and a magnification of your behavior when she doesn't like something that you do. And what it does is leave men in a state of perplexity, because at one point the church was a very masculine church. And faith, once again, is very important for some men. It helps them to see the world through a better prism or a better kaleidoscope, because while some have used the gospel and the Bible to cause chaos and confusion, the faith in itself is a very powerful book that can help a man become stable. The faith itself is very red pill if you know how to disseminate it, read it, dissect it, and apply it correctly. But you guys know, and I know, that men in general are actually abandoning churches, and they are abandoning churches because they feel that many modern preachers are sympathizers. Many will argue that modern preachers have the hyena spirit. They actually manifest a hyena spirit, and because they manifest a hyena spirit based on matriarchal concepts and ideas, many of those men are saying, I don't see any benefit going to the ecclesia or the modern church because it doesn't have any power. It doesn't preach objective theology. It's more concerned about mammon and money. And it doesn't teach or preach anything that's relevant to the efficacy of heteronormative masculinity. Men need to feel empowered if they're going to be the best versions of themselves. But when the churches are not more or less preaching theology that can more or less inspire our men are saying, you know what, I'll sit out. But many of the brothers that listen to me actually espouse or more or less adhere to certain elements of faith. They might not practice the faith 100%, but they do understand what the scripture more or less pontificates as it relates to order, as it relates to structure, and as it relates to men being men. And many actually bellow the sentiment that they wish that, most preachers would preach a more balanced gospel that does not always aggrandize our women at the behest of men. And I think what men are saying is that they want to go to church, but they feel that many times there is no power. There is no power or empowerment for men. And because of that, many men begin to suffer in silence. Guys, do me a favor, share this content, get the likes up. You guys did a phenomenal job last night. Y'all did an awesome job. Y'all helped me with the algorithm. Y'all crushed the algorithm. Y'all smashed it. And I really appreciate that. You guys did an awesome job on last night. I really appreciate it. And help me continue to push this show and to push this agenda as we live in times that are very turbulent, and as we live in times where men are actually trying to find solutions, and as men are trying to more or less question if they're going through a condition called meta madness. And meta madness, once again, was, as I said last night, what was I thinking about? And many men begin to question themselves because they're looking for answers and solutions. Many guys come to me in private and also in silence, talking about their struggles and also talking about their issues. And many are actually beginning to say the same thing because they're trying to find a level of resolve. And that's why, once again, guys, we got to have these conversations. These conversations are necessary. Let me go do some of these comments. Guys. And thank you, Luke Cates, for coming in last night. I appreciate it, dear. Yes, it was educational, very educational. Thank you, ma'am. Shout out to Gregory Scotland. Hello to Kosher and Red Lipstick and the rest of the panel, no doubt. Shout out to Leonard Hayward. Shout out Leonard Lionheart, none of your biz. The Bible isn't the problem. It's the Catholic/Christian church is the problem. Yes, many do not show or more or less manifest virtues that masculine men are looking for. So once again, guys, we're going to go back and do some reviewing because, I was a teacher in the past, and we're going to review. And we're going to have an open panel at some point where I'm going to bring the brothers up. And I'm going to ask you guys some questions. Ladies, you feel free to come up as well. But the topic of the show is, yes, Lord, only God can judge me. Yes, Lord, only God can judge me. And I don't know if you guys saw the clip of the intro before you came in, but it's the sentiment that many guys are saying. It's the frustration that many men are saying. And I'm going to play the organ for a minute, and then we're going to get into the show. Actually, no, I'm sorry.
Say yes. 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 Oh Lord. Say yes. Say yes.
He has to make at least $200,000 a year.
Are you on drugs?
No.
Sir?
On a dating site. For women, they're the only people
What
who
if you
have
like
a
big
category called big, and then they put a caveat behind it, and beautiful. Why is this big woman called beautiful but not slim and beautiful, medium and beautiful? It's only big and beautiful. Why are we
BBW?
attaching beautiful to this heavy set woman? Why? She should be able to be judged like everybody else on her beauty regardless of her size. But
Okay.
because we're catering to her. Now, when you go and look at a man, it doesn't say big and handsome.
I see your point. Actually,
But
wait,
where's the
big and tall.
confirming?
No, don't
the
even
niggas
go there.
tall.
Fire for your mind. The kosher clinician.
All right. So once again, only God can judge me. You men have heard it before in the past. Only God can judge me. And once again, many pastors assuage many modern women in their negative behaviors to the point that many have become delusional. And many, as I said last night, have ego. Yeah, egocentonia, where they think that what they feel is normal, which is a byproduct of delusion. And see, when men begin to try to more or less share or more or less convey the evidence that they're seeing in modern women, many times it's met with consternation. When you try to tell them, this is what I want, when you try to tell them, this is what I like, when you try to tell them that I don't like certain behaviors, they'll say, you're judging me, which is a form of reverse psychology. And then they'll say, only God can judge me. And then they'll turn right back around and go to church and say, yes, Lord. You know, that's how we say it in the South. We say, yes, Lord, not Lord, Lord. We just mess it up. We say, yes, Lord in the South. They'll say, only God can judge me. And see, what it does, it leaves a lot of men in a state of perplexity. Men become perplexed. Truth was never famous. He said, hollering, that's some scary. Well, listen, yeah, it can be scary because many have the granny serpent spirit. And that's what egocentonia look like. They can't hear because they think what they're doing is normal. But back to what I was saying before I lost track, they can't hear because what you're trying to convey to them goes against their mindset. They don't want to hear the truth. And it makes it hard for men because men think something is wrong with me. But many times it's nothing wrong with you, gentlemen. It's that we live in a world where many times our women are not being held accountable. And, you know, it's not that men don't love the women in our community. They love them, but they just feel like anytime they say or anytime that you try to guide them in the right direction, they'll say that only God can judge me. And then they'll go to church on Sunday once again and say, yes, Lord. And what happens many times, guys, when you try to bring more balance as it relates to a more perfect union, what they'll say is that you'll have the sympathizers like Jamal Bryant. You have the sympathizers calling out masculine men, try to shame them, because that's what he did before Kevin Samuels passed away. They're trying to shame men because they don't want their tithes and offerings to be more or less hindered. And what it does, it leads to a condition of men that have the hyena complex. They have a hyena spirit. And, you know, it makes it hard for masculine men to bring order and balance because we live in a society and culture where men have never seen true men operate in true masculinity. And that's the issue that we're having today. Men are looking for balance. They're looking for solutions. They're looking for leaders. And when they don't see thus said leaders, they become frustrated and they become angry. Now listen, guys, share the content. You guys did awesome last night. I need 5 people. Share this content. You guys, oh my God, you brothers and sisters did an awesome job on last night. So if I can get 5 people to share the content, I need you guys to hit 1. When 5 people share the content, share it on your channel, share it whenever you want to share that. I need you guys to hit 1. I don't know what's going on with this thing, man. It's looking crazy. But Red Lips Divide said that KP5 from KC, there's been a thing saying before Tupac was born. KP from KC5 said Jamal symptoms his prime deflection, uniting the pulpits over the office. Yeah, man. Yeah, that happens a lot, man. And it's unfortunate because men are looking for masculine men. They're looking for men that can help them become the better versions of themselves. But when they feel like, you know, some of these modern preachers are not giving them what they're looking for, then they become frustrated. And you guys saw it. You guys have seen it. If you grew up in church like I grew up, many times the pastors will not touch our women. They won't say anything related to the females' behavior because they know if they said something, it was going to hurt them tithes and offerings. And once again, I'm not saying that it's all pastors and it's not all churches. There are some good churches that are striving to do the right thing. There are some good churches that are trying to live up to the mandates of the ecclesia, which is the church. But there are many churches that have been devoid in their mission of hope and change. And what it's done is caused a lot of men to be frustrated or be in a state of flux. And I'm going to show it to you guys. Check
Take
this
a look.
And say that you do nothing to men who have no authority. How can a man say that you are of low value after 35? How can a man say that you do not have the level of traction of a high-powered man when that man has got to get a GoFundMe?
Yeah, and that's typical shaming language. That's your typical shaming language by many of these modern preachers. They'll try to shame you into silence, and they will try to shame you into submission because they don't want to hear you say or more or less do the right thing. Man, shout out to Ray Johnson. That brother showed me a lot of love. Ray Johnson, man, you are the current sponsor of the stream. Ray Johnson has hit me with a $40 bomb. I appreciate it, brother. He said, Ray Johnson said, sent you 40 for great content on dark personalities. No doubt, brother.
That's a
and
bet, right?
Yeah,
that's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Your time, your money.
That's a
your
bet,
effort,
right?
brother,
That's a
great.
deal, right? That's a deal, right?
And that's what it's all about, guys. You know, I told you guys, and I don't like to keep saying the same thing over and over again. Content creation is tough. It's hard. It's a very tough business to get into. If you don't believe me, try it and do it yourself. You'll be up many nights trying to come up with concepts, topics, ideas, editing. Many times my editing can go from anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7 hours. And I get it. Someone say, well, nobody asked you to do it. You're right. Nobody did ask me to do it. But because I do care about the good men and women that are listening, I want to give and inspire hope. I want to give back to the world before I leave this planet. And it helps me help you when you support the cause and when you guys support the channel. But we're going to have a powerful conversation on tonight. We're going to revisit some of the things I talked about in the past, and it's going to be another educational show because, once again, the topic is, yes, Lord, only God can judge me. And you guys have heard it before in the past. You've heard it many times that when you try to hold a percentage of the Western women accountable, they'll say, only God can judge me. And only God can judge me is magical thinking. Which is part of a delusional personality. Personality because they think they can create something outside themselves. I'm going to show you guys what magical thinking actually means. Because magical thinking is tied to delusional personality disorder many times. And I'm going to show you guys what it means. Hold tight. So let me pull this up real quick. And I know the game will come on at some point, so I'm going to have some fun. I ain't going to be before you guys long. But you guys are doing an awesome job on the night, and I appreciate it. But let's look at the definition of magical thinking. Let's look at the definition of magical thinking because, magical thinking is a condition that many modern women have, and some men have it too. But for the sake of the argument, because this is a men's channel, we're going to talk about modern women. But hold tight. So magical thinking that believe that one's ideas, thoughts, actions, words, or use of symbols can influence the course of events in the material world. Magical thinking presumes a causal link between one's interpersonal self and the external physical world. And that's what some modern women have. They have magical thinking that's tied to delusional personality disorders because they feel that they have some special link with God. And they'll say that only God can judge me. And then they'll turn around and say, yes, Lord. They'll say, yes, Lord, after they had fun at the club last night. They'll say, yes, Lord, after they, had fun fornicating. They'll say, yes, Lord, after they, did all kinds of things that are antithetical to the faith. And, it's part of the Medusa complex. It's part of what I talked about last night, the narcissism and the Medusa complex. But see, watch it once again. Here's the caveat. many modern preachers more or less implore Machiavellianism. And I might do a show on that at some point. Machiavellianism and the modern preacher. And so Machiavellianism is a personality trait that denotes cunningness, the ability to manipulate and drive to use whatever means necessary to gain power. I'm going to say it again, get the likes up. And like Bishop Charles E. Williams said, y'all ain't going to talk to me. He said that it says that Machiavellianism is part of a personality trait that denotes cunningness. Don't you guys see that in some modern preachers? Some call it pimps in the pulpit. And once again, I'm not here to accost or castigate all preachers. There are some noble men that are striving to do the right thing. There are some good men of faith that are trying to do the right thing and lift up the banner of God. But then there are some that they worship God with their mouth, but their heart is far from him. And, you know, they have the ability to be manipulative, to drive, to use whatever means necessary to gain power. And see, many women love men with power. That's why they love pastor, because pastor symbolizes power. Many times, some women would rather be with pastor or lust as a pastor over their own husbands. I know what I'm talking about because I grew up in church. I was in the choir. I was a superintendent. If I really wanted to be cunning or Machiavellianism, I could have been a pimp. I could have been a nasty one because I'm 6'5", 6'6" with shoes on, a crisp mouthpiece, and I think I'm a fairly handsome brother. And I could be real smooth with it. I could tell them what they want to hear and do all kinds of evil, manipulative things. But because that's not in my heart to do it, and I don't see the benefit of lying to people, then I can't do it. I just can't do it because I'm very genuine. And so many preachers implore Machiavellianism, which in essence is a byproduct of not holding women accountable. So you got the Machiavellian preacher on one side, and then you got the narcissistic woman on the other side. So what the Machiavellian preacher does, he feeds that narcissistic supply to the narcissistic woman, which in essence makes her say, yes, Lord, only God can judge me. And she doesn't see any negativity in her behavior because she doesn't think that anything that she's doing is wrong. And so when an average guy try to come and tell her, no, you're wrong, they'll gaslight you and say, well, no, you're wrong. You know, you're trying to judge me. And what people don't understand is this, guys. Listen, everybody judge. We all judge. You can't decipher right from wrong if you don't judge. Everybody judge. All men judge. So when people say, well, don't judge me, well, you know, you're going to be judged because we all judge. It just depends on what you're judging. If you're going to judge another person, you have to look at yourself, lest you be a hypocrite. So if you're going to judge somebody else, look at yourself first. But also if you judge, make sure you judge righteous. But we all judge. A lawyer will judge a person based on their code of conduct, based on something called the penal code. A doctor would judge a person based on his medical book and his medical training as it relates to a diagnosis. A therapist judges mental illness based on the DSM-5, and the preacher should judge sin based on the gospel. But see, when you're trying to bring clarity and common sense to average and modern people, once again, they don't want to hear it because they say, oh, you know, you're judging me, and you can't never tell them anything. And that's why so many remain in ego syntony. And many also have a condition called cognitive dissonance. They cannot hear what you're trying to say to them or show them because there's a loud banging noise inside their head. Kevin Samuels, when he was living, talked about something called shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. I came with my own acronym because I'm the coach of clinician called DEAF. As I talked about it last night, they deny the evidence. They become enraged when you present them with the evidence. They argue to ad hominem attacks where they attack the messenger instead of attacking the message. And then they will fight you or they will flee because their mind cannot hear the truth. We live in a time now where people believe in what's called moral relativism. They'll say your truth is your truth and her truth is her truth, but in actuality, there's no such thing as your truth. It's only the objective truth, because the truth is the truth. And so when you try to bring balance and try to bring clarity in these discussions, many don't want to hear it because they have cognitive dissonance. And it makes it very hard for men to have balanced and sustainable relationships, because many times the women don't want to hear what the men are saying. Shout out to, let me read through some of these comments. You guys are doing an awesome job tonight. Let me go, let me read some of these things. Hold tight. None of your business said you can even tell by the noise that it was mostly women there. Yes, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. Truth is never favored, said the coach. How are you, brother? I'm glad to see you on Snipers Post, ready to get drop on the enemy. Wars ready, soldiers, God. So no doubt, respect that, brother. And you're right. At the Coach College, the black church is driven by feminism and the emasculation of men, and many men feel that way. Many men feel they don't have a voice. If they are men, they're bought and they're sold out because they either have a Machiavellian mindset and they use it to feed the narcissistic supply of some modern women. And once again, this is not to say all. There's some noble women that are striving to do the right thing. There's some noble churches that are striving to do the right thing, and there's some noble men. There are some good sisters striving to do the right thing. They're like wheat in the midst of tares. But we can't bring balance to the union when there's no accountability. We talk about it all the time. We say, who's holding folks accountable? And when men begin to speak out, many times they're shamed back into silence. And so when men tell their stories, when men tell their misgivings, many men feel like they are crazy. And that craziness is a byproduct of meta madness, because they begin to ask themselves the question, what was I thinking about to have allowed that? Or what was I thinking about when the person said what they said? Shout out to my man Top Gun. Top Gun said, a little benevolent offering for you, my brother. These pimping practices and Granny serpent stewards are detrimental to today's relationship. I appreciate that, Top Gun. Gregory Scott said, many pastors, preachers, and priests now would not make significant comments on the single mother situation. Yes, I've seen that as well. Red Lipstick Vibe said that, yes, kosher clinician PK here. I know what you're talking about, no doubt. You know what, Red Lipstick Vibe, I would love for you to come on at some point later. Please come on. Let's have a conversation, because you and I both grew up in church. As I say, I don't live it like I used to. I got a lot of repenting to do, but I am honest. Red Lipstick Vibes, I would love to hear your position, sweetie, tonight at some point. Please come on. Share your worldview, share your position, because once again, that's the sentiment, Red Lipstick Vibes, of a lot of modern women in some of these churches, that only God can judge me. And then they'll turn around after they had fun on Saturday night, and doing everything they've grown up to do and say, yes, Lord. And we continue to have issues because there's no accountability. And like Top Gun said, we got a lot of granny serpents. And the granny serpents also assuage that narcissism, because they'll say, baby, you okay? They'll tell them, instead of saying, sit down, young lady, conduct yourself as a lady, the granny serpents will tell them, oh, baby, you fine, baby. The Lord is love you just like you is. And, the granny serpents, when you try to hold them accountable, they get a schema affliction. And many times the granny serpents, how you doing? I don't know how to say your name. Inye Nenya. You need to come on too, Inye. You don't never come on, man. You always, but yeah, come on, please, Inye, at some point. If you want to come on and talk as well. You ladies always be hiding in the cut, but I'm not going to bite you. But once again, they also, guys, get a schema affliction, because they can hear. The granny serpents actually uphold Yeah, the granny serpents, actually, when you hold them accountable, they get a schema affliction, a fixation in their head that causes them pain or fear. And, we need strong masculine men so that we can go against the dark triad, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and also narcissism. We need masculine, strong men to more or less hold up the banner and more or less hold certain women for being accountable, because there are good men that are looking for answers and solutions. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go back and review a little bit. Shout out to my man, Michael Green, for that $5 super sticker. He said, for keeping up the good work. Thank you, brother, for that $5. Thank you, Michael Green. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And you brothers and sisters are awesome. So let's look into it, guys. I'm going to go back and review some of the things that I talked about in the past. I'm going to review a show that I did with Bolo TV. And also, I got something else I'm going to bring up. And then I'm going to ask you guys the question. I want to have an open panel. What were your experiences growing up in church? What did the church teach you about women? And what's your take on modern churches? And so let's look at it, because we talked about it in the past, but we are going to review it. It talks about the non-traditional woman. I ran this up last night. And the non-traditional modern woman, non-traditional that is selfish. She only thinks about herself. She lacks self-awareness. Many times is very promiscuous. She lacks accountability. When you try to hold her accountable, she gets mad. She's slanderous. She get mad at any man that tells the truth, and they'll make up lies about you because they don't like what you're saying. And they'll say that, once again, only God can judge me. And then they'll turn around, go back to church and say, yes, Lord. They're rebellious. Many are fatherless. Many are eternal victims. They can be very vengeful. Many times men have to be very careful how they move, because some of these modern women are very vengeful. They'll lie. They'll try to set you up if you say something to hurt their feelings. Her feelings are over principle. A woman that can control her feelings is a very strong, disciplined woman. But if a woman cannot control her feelings, she's not ready for the mission of being the wife of a man. Many are indoctrinated by liberal dogmas or liberal schools of thought. They have thinking errors. They have cognitive dissonance, like I talked about it earlier. They have unresolved trauma. And the last one is that many secretly hate men. They secretly hate men because they saw their mom go through vicarious trauma with men that hurt them. And sometimes they are conscious of it, but many times they are not conscious of it. And so they secretly hate the men that they are dealing with. The carnal Christian woman, she has a form of godliness. She loves the world. She's religious. She never fasts or pray. She has spiritual blindness. The modern preacher many times assuages many modern women in their pathologies. She's a Christian feminist. We're going to talk about that in a minute. There is no difference from the world. She's rebellious. She challenges the authority of her husband. She has a lust for power. As I said before earlier, in order to get that narcissistic supply many times, she'll get with a Machiavellian preacher. And that Machiavellian preacher feeds that narcissistic supply. Once again, I think I'm going to do a show at some point called The Modern Preacher and Machiavellianism. And I might even have Dr. Thunder on the show. We're going to break it down. She wants to be the first lady. They love power. They want to be like the first lady. And they're trying to make you feel bad when you can't give her some of the virtues of the first lady. She is prone to gossip. She's not a spiritual woman. She's prone to gossip. She got to be right. And also she loves attention. She loves the attention of other men. She'll go to church on Sunday and say, yes, Lord, but then turn right back around and go on Instagram, dress provocative, and have men in her DMs while she's married to her husband, won't say anything, but then she'll try to make you feel like you're wrong or stupid when you call her out. She'll say, well, you're insecure. And you're not insecure. You're insecure with her behavior, but you're not insecure as a man. That's a succinct difference. You may not be secure in the behavior that your woman is manifesting, but it does not make you an insecure man. A woman's actions or a man's actions can make a woman not feel safe in that relationship. If you have boundaries and that person is violating your boundaries, then you don't feel safe. That's why we have boundaries. So when people say, well, I'm not insecure, but that's dumb. because you cannot feel secure in your boundaries or within your boundaries if someone is violating it. If somebody tells me don't touch me, that's a boundary of mine. It doesn't mean that you are insecure by default. It means because that person is touching you, now you don't feel safe. So it's a shaming language. It's reverse psychology because they want to control you. They're prone to gossip. They got to be right. And once again, they love attention. And that's the world, guys, that we're living in. Let me read you some of these comments. Shout out to MC Recovery and Wellness. Shout out to MC Recovery and Wellness. Hold tight. Oh, my goodness. All right. So MC Recovery and Wellness said, yes, ladies got to get involved. Ladies, get involved in the show. We don't bite, no doubt. I would love to hear from some of the women on tonight. I would love to hear from the sisters. Ricky Gabrowski said, I'm here coaching my type of topic, no doubt, brother. Truth is never favorite said that yes, men need to be men. Love, loyalty, commitment, fire. Okay, no doubt. Ricky said fresh out of Sunday night service, no doubt. Shout out to Red Lipstick Vibe. She said, yes, indeed. Oh boy, this is good. Thank you, dear. I appreciate it. Yes, right. The coach clinician, woo, brother, that carnal, fraudulent Christian woman is prevalent in these YouTube areas, even the content creators. Yes, they are, brother. And that's why I'm trying to break this thing down tonight. MC Recovery and Wellness said, the one that get me is when black women or people in general say God is good, then come all the time. No doubt. Shout out MC Recovery and Wellness. For that $5, Truth is never favorite, and he is teaching tonight, no doubt. That's that fire for your mind. I want to hit you with some fire for your mind.
Fire for your mind.
That's what we Leos do. That Leo swag. I'm gonna hit you with some fire for your mind because you need to have your mind enlightened so you can see some of the patterns and the behaviors of some of these modern women.
Fire for your mind. The kosher tradition.
Fire for your mind. Lionheart for the $5 super sticker. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you, Lionheart. Thank you, brother, for that $5 sticker. You brothers are awesome. Truth is never favorite. He said that Red Lipstick Vibe sis, the last 2 nights, the spirit of David guide and coach. He ready for Goliath. I hope so. I don't know about that, but appreciate it, brother. I appreciate the truth is never favorite. Thank you, sir. But now let's go to the last one because once again, They worship me with their mouth. How you doing, Jenny, sweetie? How you doing, Jenny? Thank you, dear. I appreciate you for tuning in. But once again, they worship me with their mouth, but their heart is far from me. And we live in a time where people are looking for answers. They're looking for answers from the ecclesia, which is the church. And it caused a lot of people to be baffled because most preachers now, or many preachers, don't preach authentic heteronormative gospel or patriarchal gospel. They preach for the sake of money. They tell people what they want to hear. And because of that, many men leave frustrated because they feel like their souls are not being fed. And then the last one, once again, is the spiritual woman. That was like your grandma Bertha, your grandmom Sally Mae and them. Those were good women. They were like Fannie Lou Hamers of the world. They were like Mahalia Jackson. They were modest women. They conducted themselves. They were women of character. They were women of substance. But they also were prayerful women. That's what kept our ancestors sustainable when we were in slavery. They prayed their way through their pain. They prayed their way through the struggles. That's what kept a lot of our men strong, because I told you guys that there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized. And so they got Proverbs 31 traits. They do not seek worldly fame. They're kingdom-minded. They seek to please their husband. They have control over their emotions. And I told you guys once again, a woman that can control her emotions is a true spiritual woman. A woman that can control her emotions is ready for the duty of a wife, because she puts her family over her emotions. She's not a slave to her emotions, but she's a slave to doing the will of God. She's not a slave to her emotions, but she's a slave to her purpose as a woman, which is to nurture her family and also to nurture her husband. And that's what happens, guys. You need a woman like that. a woman that's ready to, that's willing to serve her husband, and a woman that's ready or willing to serve her family. And when you have that, it makes your situation a lot better. It makes the family situation a lot better when those women are willing to more or less do the right thing and more willing to look within themselves in a very equitable and in a very healthy way. Hold tight. I'm trying to find something. Hold tight. Hold tight. And so once again, she does not seek attention. She has control over her emotions. She's a prayer warrior. She understands the hierarchy. She's a Corinthians woman. She understands that there's the Father, Christ, man, woman, and children. She's not intimidated by her husband being in power. Her heart is her family. She is a wife, not a partner. She's not caught up in egalitarian constructs where they say we're partners. Some women say partner and they don't mean anything by it. They just say it out of ignorance. But partner is a new concept, and you're not your husband's partner, you're his wife. His job is to love you and protect you, and your job is to assist him meet his mission on earth. She works outside of the home and manages her time. She's not prone to gossip, and this woman takes accountability. If you find a woman, guys, to take accountability for her behavior, she said, you know what, babe, I was wrong. I'm going to work on it. She is a winner if she's genuine. Now, some of them will fake it. But if she's a genuine woman, then you got a winner. Because women like that, guys, are far and few between. They're rare. And so if you find a woman that said, baby, I'm sorry, like Anita Baker said, I apologize, then you got you a rare woman. She's a rare woman. So let's read through some of these comments. My man, True was never phased. Said, yes, this is the woman I'm looking for, and being patient, I will not accept nothing less, no doubt. He said that I'm worthy because I'm a addended man of God. I'm submitted to the Father. The Christ, red lipstick vibes. So when the church has changed its values and adapted to the other ideas, that's when it all changed in the church. Yes, ma'am. And that's why these conversations are so important. I had a show. I'm trying to see if I can find that show that I did with. Trying to find that show that I did recently. We're going to review that, and then I'm going to drop the link, and we're going to talk about yes, LAWD. We're going to talk about it because these conversations are very important. All right. So hold tight. Hold tight. We're going to critique this because these are the women that are saying yes, LAWD. All right. So hold tight. Let me bring this link up real quick, guys. We're going to break this thing down. And that's why Kevin was hated so much, because you didn't have to agree with everything he was saying, but the brother was spot on many times. So let's review it, and then we're going to review the one that I did with Bolo real quick. Let's review this real quick. Listen.
Single, never married, no children.
All right. So what do we got here?
I honestly...
And once again, before we start, guys, this is fair use. This is for educational purposes only. And so this woman is an example of a Christian feminist. I'm going to critique this a little bit. Fair use, guys, fair use. For educational purposes only. And then I'm going to critique a show that I did recently as well. All right.
We just found you like this past week, and I've been listening to a lot of your the conversations that you've been having with women, and I'm just intrigued. So I thought that I would join.
What do you find? What do you find intriguing?
Huh?
What do you find intriguing?
Just the subjects and the things that you guys talk about, just in regard to women being a certain way, and then they think that they deserve, top earners in the country, and yeah, it's just kind of crazy.
Well,
so
okay, you said you're single no children,
Yeah.
never been married.
Correct.
All right. What do you want, or what is it you've ever wanted with a man in your life?
Gosh. Okay. So to be honest, I've only had like 2 serious relationships.
Okay.
Other than that, I've dated, but
You
it
go to
just
college?
I did not.
All right. What do you do for,
I have
what do you do for a living?
I work in retail.
Okay. As an associate?
Yeah. Special. I mean, I've been listening to all of these things, and like, according to the ladies that call you and the conversations you have, like, I have nothing. I'm just gonna be honest, but I have been waiting. I've been a Christian. I became a Christian at 21, and I have been waiting in purity for basically 23 years to find someone.
You've been waiting in what? For purity, you say?
Yes. I do not have sex. I do not sleep around.
Are you saying you're a virgin?
Born again, if you want to say it that way.
How long has that been?
To my personal convictions, I've only fallen to sexual sin once in 23 years.
How long ago was that?
2016.
Okay, so your personal convictions, because I was Christian since 5 years old.
Okay.
How do you plan on handling your elder years? 65 to 85.
I do.
To the point you won't have a husband, you won't have a family or children.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be too old to really work to make significant income.
Mm-hmm.
Then what?
I honestly don't know. I would like to be married, but I'm just not yet.
When did you become a Christian?
When I was 21.
So I can tell you, man, I'm hearing things that make no sense to me. How can you want to be married and you're a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the husband? Where's Adam? Eve?
What do you want? Want a job that I don't hate.
Oh, because what I hear, let me be honest, what I hear a lot of times.
So basically, guys, just like there can be an unconscious simp, there can be a woman that is unconscious as it relates to her role and her relationship with the things that she believes in. Christian feminists say that they're Christians with their mouth, but some of their ideologies are not tied to the truth or the gospel. And that's why I say they always say, yes, Lord, only God can judge me, because when you try to present them with the truth, many have a conniption.
Is women using God and Christianity as an excuse for their fear and why they didn't get out here. There's no way you're supposed to be single.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying I'm not having
honestly,
sex.
I know. I haven't really put myself out there. People have found me, honestly.
How do you look? Have you had any therapy?
Some I have, yeah.
Because this isn't normal, man. It's simply not normal.
And guys, that's what I do. Kevin was an advocate for therapy. He was an advocate for the modern family. While I do believe in families, I feel that sadly, many modern women are not wife worthy or wife ready. There are some good sisters that are remnant. I call them the remnant sisters. They're the ones behind the scene that are trying to do the right thing. They're striving. They're not perfect. They know that they have a female nature that if they're not careful, they will become a slave to their feelings. They'll tell you, that's a mature woman. And I respect those sisters. Shout out to them. But by and large, many are not fit to be wives because they've never seen true masculinity or true masculine authority in the homes. And many don't respect or honor men. And many have thinking errors. And, you know, as I said, Kevin was an advocate for marriage, but he also was an advocate for therapy. I'm not necessarily an advocate for marriage in these modern times unless the laws change. And that doesn't appear to be happening anytime soon. And that's why we got to have these conversations, because yes, Lord, only God can judge me is a form of minimization. It's a form of magical thinking. It's ego syntonia. And it's a lack of her ability to self-introspect to see the issues that she's dealing with.
Normal. This is not even normal human behavior. You can't tell me my first commandment in the Garden of Eden was to be what? Fruitful and multiply.
To be, yeah.
Okay, so now you're 43, so that's pretty much a wrap.
You think so? Well, according to worldly statistics, but I think it's possible to be married and be happy.
Ma'am, I don't care about, and this is why I'm gonna be honest. You're not Sarah. You have to go that far. You think it's possible, ma'am? You work in retail. You're not Abraham. This isn't Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar.
You know that.
Okay, so why if it's possible, can you afford? Because Wednesday I'm gonna be talking about this IVF stuff. Can you afford $12,000 to $12,000 to $25,000 per IVF treatment?
You didn't ask me if I wanted kids. I really don't desire to have children.
I said being a kids is over at the wrap. You said, well, you think so? So what? You made the statement.
I mean, like, I'm just thinking in regard to like even being married.
You don't even want to be. You're not thinking you want to be married?
No, I'm saying like I would like to be married. I don't desire kids.
Why do you want to be married?
I think if I were to find my best friend, someone
that's not what a husband's job is. Christian.
I mean, kind of. My godparents are best friends.
Hey, Christian. It's not what a husband's job is.
Okay.
You're not coming in with this now. You got the right one. That's not what a husband's job is, Christian woman. Was Adam Eve's friend?
No.
That's not his job now, is it?
I mean, the Bible, it says that she was his helpmate.
Helpmate. That means she had a job to do. She's supposed to help him tend to the garden. And what use, and see, what I'm trying to get you to understand is, you said you in this position because this religious reason, but you're not living that religion. This is Christian feminism. And you're using God, women like you use God as a reason to mask your dysfunction. Dysfunction, inability to function. There's no reason that you should be 43 years old talking about you want to be married. Cool, you want to be married. I got a real hardcore question for you. Solid question. Reasonable though, not a diss, but a reasonable question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What value is a 43-year-old woman to a man in marriage?
I honestly don't know how to answer that because I've never really thought about it.
You should though, because you say you want to be married. Cool, but you need a man. And what value and the reasons that men typically marry is for legacy, offspring.
And that's what we talked about earlier, guys, that many come into relationships not ready to serve or be a service for their men, but many come into relationships expecting you to serve them. They don't have the heart of a servant. They see anything that's synonymous to being a servant as something sacrilegious or something beneath them. But watch this. The great teacher and prophet and son of God said that yet in the form of God, he counted not robbery to be equal with God, but he humbled himself. It was called the kenosis. But also he washed his servant's feet. He washed the disciples' feet. It's called a servant leader. And it basically is teaching you that in order to lead, you must be a servant to men. And because he knew at some point that he was going to have to die. But see, the modern woman does not know how to be a servant to her man because she thinks her man is supposed to worship her. And some of you men have been so conditioned not to think you're worth anything. You allow it. You allow it because, you didn't have strong fathers. You didn't have strong communities. And you did it because you thought that would make her happy. But I've said before in the past, she only respects power and strength. I saw a guy today, and he killed a woman, or he deleted a woman. And you know what the guy said after he deleted that woman? This is what he said.
Yeah, put chain on my mom. They be bringing mom. Kill some of my mom. Bro, they back. That's on my mom. That's on my mom. That's on my mom.
Yeah, he said it was on his mama when he took that woman's life. And see, that's what happens when you don't have women that are willing to come under the masculine authority of their husband to guide their children. You have young guys like this young brother and many young men in the inner cities that are wild and very vibrant, and they'll take your life and say, on my mama. Before he took that woman's life, he said, on my mama. And that's what happens when you have these pastors that have a Machiavellian spirit, a Machiavellian mindset, and you have some of these modern women that go to church, the Christian feminists. The Machiavellian preacher, which is an exploiter, he feeds the narcissistic supply. And that's why you have so much unresolved in these families, in these churches, in these communities, because once again, anytime you try to tell them right or wrong, they say only God can judge me. And once again, they have cognitive. A Piece of Life says she wants to be married for financial security. Women like her only want men as a utility. Yes. KP from KC5 said Philippians 2:5, no doubt. Taylor Josh said relational versus transactional. Excellent point, brother. Actually, excellent point. I like that. And that is the Savage. Hold tight. Ray John, that's an excellent point. And that is the Savage. That's a Savage comment. Relational, they want transaction instead of relations. And you're right, brother. I agree with you 1,000%. And Lionheart says, what makes a queen a queen? She knows how to uphold and maintain the kingdom. Right. She comes as an adjunct or as a person to help build the kingdom of her man. And Shirley Brown said it better than I could say it. I don't want to play Shirley. I might get a copyright strike. But hold tight.
Now you see, I don't want no trouble now.
All right. Shirley said, I love that man. I ain't gonna play all of it. They might got me with a copyright strike, but I don't know. I gotta condense that. But Shirley Brown said, I love that man. And see, that's what men are looking for. They're looking for women like old school sisters like Shirley Brown. Shirley Brown was one of them old school sisters say, I love that man. She put her heart and her soul for her man. But see, many of you women come into relationships with a defunct mindset. You come in thinking that a man's going to hurt you, and you come in with a wall up. And listen, I'm going to be honest, some of the men do too. Men have been hurt, have a hard time trusting modern women. But when you come into a relationship with a wall up, then you can't give that man your best. Part of being in love or part of being in relationships is being able to feel vulnerable and allowing yourself to be vulnerable or to fall. But if you go into a relationship already with veneers up and with blinders up, and more or less instead of seeing things for what it is, you'll never reap the full benefits of intimacy or romantic relations. And so once again, we're going to finish the conversation. We're going to drop the link at some point, and we're going to keep listening to this later. And then I'm going to play a clip that I did with Bolo, and then we're going to have a conversation.
Biologically, our creator made you more valuable for that 20 years ago. Within a certain amount of years, you will hit the change. So it won't be possible. They will require immaculate conception or divine intervention. Then at that point, what value is it to a man to marry a woman who cannot carry his child?
Well, someone has shown interest, and he already has children, and
Hey guys, Grant Cardone here. I wrote this book for you, How to Create Wealth Investing in Real Estate. Behind me is a property that I'm selling.
I don't mind. I don't know. I don't mind not having kids.
Okay, that's fine. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is, as a woman, your value diminishes the more things you take off the table. When was your last relationship?
A long time ago. Like I said, I've dated.
What was your last relationship, though?
Probably the early 2000s.
I don't know what that means, ma'am.
Like maybe 2009, 2010.
How long did that last?
Honestly, we dated off and on for a few years, and then there came a point in time where
Ma'am, if I asked you
there was just like a cross.
If I asked you a question, it's 43 years old. Chronologically, that's your age, but from a relationship maturity standpoint, do you feel like a 43-year-old woman?
No, I don't.
How old do you? If you had to say what your relational age would be, how old do you think you would be?
And so that's what you're seeing, guys. That's what you guys are beginning to see in modern times. You have, once again, Christian feminists that talk from two sides of their mouth. Some are defunct Christian feminists, meaning they don't know that's what they are. And then some are actually conscious Christian feminists, and they don't know how to more or less come into position as it relates to serving a man. I'm going to play about 2 or 3 more minutes of this. I'm going to stop it. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's 46 minutes. And then I'm going to bring the other link up, and then we're going to drop the link, and we're going to have a conversation. The question is going to be, what were your experiences growing up in the early church? What did the church teach you about modern women? And what's your take on the modern church? Dr. Thunder, if you want to come up at some point, we can break it down. Feel free to. After I break everything down, you can come up and we can have a powerful discussion.
What age range?
Probably my 20s.
You're in your teens.
Or maybe
you're in your
30s.
teens. You're in your teens.
Do you think so?
Ma'am, I talk to women for a living. You're talking like a young lady, a teenage girl.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't know you were 43 and I just had to read the transcript, you sound like a teenage girl. And you've been living, you haven't had a relationship, you're not sexually active. You say this is for religious reasons, but if that's the case, then at 43, this ain't God's plan. This is your plan. You've had to actively make yourself unavailable. You have had to actively make yourself unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
Now the milk is spoiled. Now you're to the point where you're talking.
What did you say? The milk is spoiled?
Yes, you're 43.
That's really funny.
Your eggs are dead, dying. It's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to get through to women like you recognize that y'all don't have time, man. Men marry for a reason. You talking about you don't mind being but okay, you don't mind, but you don't even have any practice in being a stepmother. You ain't even been a girlfriend.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why I like.
But it's not religion.
That's part of the reason why I didn't.
It's not God. It's not just spiritual beliefs. You're afraid of relationships for what? What is your father? Is your father still alive?
No. So I grew up in first foster care, 7 to 18. And then long story short, I was adopted when I was 28.
Let's skip to the plot, man. Get to the end. Here's the reality.
Okay.
You don't make enough money to be alone. You work retail. You're gonna die on the streets. Let me just skip to the plot. If a man was in your position with a high school diploma working retail, he would have to have a family to be able to survive. You need a, that's the bottom line. And you're starting to see more and more and more women turning out homeless, especially Black women, because y'all have not learned how to work with a man. The best years are behind you. Your prime years. You're in the later years. At 43, you may still look at yourself in the mirror and say, I still look good for 43, but you're 43. When I say the milk is spoiled, that offends you, but it's not, it shouldn't be offensive, man. Menopause. It's not offensive, it's natural. But because women have not prioritized relationship until later in life, if at all, and they're not making the kind of money that they need to make to be independent and single, y'all are in a trick bag. And there's no nice talking that's going to get you out of it. You work in retail. Are you in management? No?
No.
So if you get fired from your retail job or you lose your job, you know retail is in detail, is a tailspin. Corona.
And once again, guys, the intimacy goes back to the intimacy. There's a wall up based on vicarious trauma of the past. Vicarious meaning they lived through the trauma of the mothers or others in their lives, and all of it's not trauma. Some of it is just rebellion. They want to do what they want to do. I'm gonna listen. We're gonna let you play for about 2 or 3 more minutes. We're gonna stop it, and then I'm gonna bring the next link up, and then we're gonna have a panel discussion where we bring brothers and sisters up. I would love for some of the women to come up. Ladies, please come up, at least 1 or 2, and then we're gonna have a very poignant conversation.
Slowed it down, but retail has been going out. I'm an image consultant, so I understand the nature of retail. Neiman Marcus was about to go bankrupt before coronavirus. How you gonna live?
Thankfully, they provided us to be able to work at home. So I maintain employment.
Work at home today. What about 65?
Yeah.
And why I'm doing this, and it seems like it's kind of harsh, because the world has just the world is okay. It's taken women like you and said, you know what, we'll use you. We'll tell you to be independent, and we'll let you sit in church, pay your tithes, let you work in retail, make us money, and we'll take your prime years. And then when you're too old to marry and no longer useful to the company, or we extracted all of our value out of you, and we no longer want you, we want the 25-year-old version of you, we put you out to pasture. Then you look around and you can't get a job because you haven't been preparing for the next step. And it's hitting our community more than anything else, because there is no way you should be single at 40-something years old. Our grandparents weren't, and the people before us were not. And until we start having these conversations, and you ladies start accepting the hardcore reality that you need a man. It's not an option. You need a man need a man today. What's the holdup?
Shout out to the brother. Shout out to A Peaceful Life for that $20 super sticker.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Yeah, you're right, Top Gun. I didn't realize it, man. I thought Boston was playing tonight. But shout out to A Peaceful Life. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I'm saying you need a man today financially. Unless you're going to go get a woman.
No.
Then what's the okay, but not okay. So if saying you need a man, you need another income for security. You need, what state are you in? California?
I'm in Arizona.
Arizona. You need another income and a half.
You can't always plan when you'll need a gun. Rational gun owners carry not because it's a weapon, but because it's a shield.
And is this and my question to you, is this Is this what kind of drew you to my content? This conversation that obviously you haven't had?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is sad.
What was interesting is, like, I guess the mindset. I feel like I don't have the mindset of a lot of, I've never said I want to be independent, I want this or that. There is some truth to you saying me being actively unavailable.
Yeah.
And I have sought counsel. I am 5'11".
Okay. You have to go out of your way to be in your situation. That's why I say actively, this is a choice. You're 5'11", almost 6 feet tall, and then saying, I'm not sexually active. That puts so you can't be inconspicuous. You have a certain look, you have a model's height. So you've had opportunity. You might as well have been 5 foot tall and 400 pounds and ugly. Nothing. I'm not joking. You might as well have been 5 foot, 400 pounds and ugly for your outcomes. Because your outcomes are what? You've not used any of it. You've actively avoided relationship. To whose benefit?
Not necessarily. I have gone out and dated. I have liked people. And actually in 2016, that he wanted to be with me.
But all right, guys, that's enough of that. That's a little snippet of many modern women that say they believe in the teachings of the gospel, but yet they still hold on to worldly beliefs to hold them renderless for healthy and sustainable relationships. In a minute, guys, we're going to drop the link. We're going to have a conversation. Your experiences growing up in church. What did church teach you about women? And your take on the modern church. Let me see if I can find the link for what I did with Bolo. Hold tight. And hold tight. Let's have a conversation, guys. Hold tight. Her man. So, Bolo, if you want to come on, brother, come on. You know, I haven't forgot you. You're not supposed to be doing the show at some point in the future. But Bolo, if you're in the house, man, feel free to pop on, brother. I would love to hear you. If you want to add to this conversation, this discussion, as we seek to bring balance to a time when things are very turbulent. So, Bolo, the stream has been dropped, brother. Feel free to pop on. If not, I understand. Guys, the link has also been dropped to anyone else that would like to add to the discussion. What was your take, tradition versus modern, over this light-skinned Keisha fiasco, where she got a lot of negative pushback, for saying, my man comes first? Okay, hold tight. That's go ahead.
Yeah, she came out the right time. I mean, it's like the Kevin Samuel effects they're saying today. You know what I'm saying? It was supposed to happen. So they're going to say everybody sound like Kevin Samuel, but the thing is, he's going to stay in their head for the rest of their life because he was right. And unfortunately, they got to live with that truth because, let's be real, he wasn't lying about some stuff that we're suffering in the community with right now that we're not addressing. And I think for them to think that men should not date outside, that's not really the main issue. It's just that you guys got to look at the bigger picture, that men are not picking from the culture no more because we're seeing the same type carbon copies again every time. It's like you want to understand that person that's not like you, but it's like you got to look at yourself and realize, am I like the last women that are today's time? You know what I'm saying? That's really all we have to ask ourselves as ladies. If they ask themselves, they will learn that and not realize I'm not acting like the woman that these men want and have to be better so I can get the men that I pray I want. It don't got to be all this extra, like, why does school have to make a bigger difference? It's like spiritually, I mean, even I said Kevin made a point about Christian feminists in the church. Like, that's a thing. It's like, I'm in doubt.
And guys, let me say this. I know there are some guys that don't always or more or less believe in some of the tenets of what Kevin Samuels talked about. I'm okay with that. I didn't agree 100% with Kevin, but a lot of the things he said were right on point. What you guys got to understand that in men's circles, one of the things I've always said, I said, whereas men, we don't always agree on all things. We don't always agree on all ideologies. But we do come together as allies. Why are men coming together as allies? We all recognize that there are issues in the world that impact men. And so we come together as allies of a common cause. What is the common cause? The struggles of being men in this modern time, only to dissipate or go away when the crisis is over. I don't think the crisis will ever go away. I think this crisis will continue to percolate for a few generations. I'll probably be gone whenever things turn around. But the show is dedicated to bring men from different worldviews and different perspectives together. You know, we don't have to revert to name calling because we have differences in opinion. As civil men, we have conversations. If we disagree, and we keep it moving. There were things that Kevin said that make sense, but I didn't always agree 100% with what he was saying either. Because my logic is, you know, you take the meat and you throw the bones away. But if you're going to be an intellectual, you have to look at things from all parameters. There were some good things that he said, and some of the things he said make sense. I didn't agree with his position on marrying some of these modern women because many don't believe in marriage and they don't care about men and relationships. But we have to have conversations about it, lay aside our petty differences, all for the sake of the common cause. So let's keep listening, guys.
So it's popular here. So I mean, I'm not even trying to find that, but the thing is, if we get that corrected, they will do better for the men that they say they want, but they don't want them. And like, why are you losing the men? They go into the other people that are open to be wives that are truly traditional women.
Well, you know, these conversations are necessary, man. We're getting it. Bolo, how would you like to add to the conversation, brother? You know, we're talking about all for my man. And there was a woman in the past, Bolo, I don't know how old you are, but there was a woman by the name of Shirley Brown. Shirley Brown often bellowed this song.
Now you see, I don't want no trouble now.
Right? Like you said, if you were single now, you ain't arguing with no woman because you understand your standards. These women nowadays are not living up to it. You know, we have the traditional woman versus the modern woman.
And the more recently modern light-skinned Keisha, even though she's starting off right, she might not have it all together, but at least she realizes that putting her man is important. Well, how would you like to add to the conversation how women of the past have greatly de-evolved from the women, or women of the modern have de-evolved from women of the past?
Well, first, I would like to say thank you for having me on, and
no doubt,
you know what's going on, traditional versus modern talks.
Last name Dolo, so Bolo got a similar thing in mind.
Coach, you guys are on point, man. You know, the culture. There's a gap between the older, you know, generation and the younger generation.
Right.
And this younger generation is trying to figure things out, not understand it, and then they're not patient. They're not figuring things out on how to be a man. You know, you have young men trying to figure out how to be a father, how to be a man, how to be a husband, all at the same time, you know, which makes things much harder, right? And the one thing that, you know, I always say that before I'm a father, before I'm a husband, I'm a man of God.
Right.
That transcends all those paradigms, right? So having those parameters is going to give me the strength and the wherewithal to understand what I need to do as a man, as a father, as a husband. So when we try to jump into these things and not knowing our wealth, not knowing our worth, right? So you have a diamond.
Right.
Now, you know, you have diamonds that are one carat that's worth $10 million. You have a diamond that's 1 carat that's worth $50, right? If you don't do the math, if you don't do the studying, if you don't do the homework and don't know what that diamond is worth, you can never get its value. Right. Once you do that math and you get and you understand what the worth is, now you can demand the value in your standards, right? Like you said, if you were single now, you ain't arguing with no woman because you understand your standards. These women nowadays are not living up to it. You know, we have the traditional woman versus the modern woman. And there's a distinct difference. You know, you look at the modern woman, it's all about them. Right. It's all about me trying to get mine and do what I need to do to get to where I need to be.
Right.
The traditional woman understood her position in the home.
Right.
A traditional woman thought process was able to be tenacious enough to get the degrees, get the PhDs, go into that workforce, do what she needs to do to get the spoils and bring it home to the family.
Yes, sir. Excellent. Right.
So she was able to go into that situation, same as the traditional man and the modern man. The traditional man knows how to be in the world, but not of it.
Right.
A lot of us get caught up. A lot of us hear what this, what society is saying, and we get bent to it.
Right.
We get bent to it and lost. Right. So you know you're not ready for that big 5-bedroom home. But because your woman is hearing everybody else in her circle getting these homes, you bend.
Right.
Instead of you taking that stand and say, yo, listen, man, we can't afford it right now. So you know what? You just going to have to cry, deal with it. And when we get to that point where I can maintain it, then we'll get to that. See, a lot of us, what we're doing is we're bending to these women and then we're blaming them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree, brother.
You know what I'm saying? We're bending to them and then blaming them and not looking in the mirror and saying, but hold on, G. You got to look in the mirror.
I'll look in the mirror.
You could have just told her, I always use this example. And, my wife don't like when I use it, but I use it anyway. I'm in a minivan and I'm on, I have a destination. Now, me as a man, I don't want to be by myself in this minivan. I want people I don't want to be alone. I want company, right? But damn it, don't get it twisted. I could do it by myself.
Right.
And that's the problem. Us as men, we're not patient.
Right.
We want the woman that we want instead of the woman that we need.
Right. Excellent
the woman
point.
that you need is going to pray for you. She going to cover you when you can't cover yourself. She going to give back into, you know what I'm saying? When you get that woman that you want, you're using your sight instead of vision. You see that fat behind and you like, damn, I'm never going to get a chick like this again, man. So you know what? Yeah, I'm just going to do it. And then when you get her pregnant and she ain't worth the paper that she's printed on.
Right.
Now you get pissed off and angry when she taking you to court.
Right.
She was a viper when you met her. You thought you can change her. A viper is a viper, man.
A viper is a viper.
Viper's a viper.
I totally agree.
Don't get pissed off when you put your hand to the cage and the damn tiger take your hand off.
Right.
Why do we kill a tiger?
Right.
We have to understand that these women are who they say they are.
They are who they say they are. Right.
They are who they say they are. You can't, in your mind, make them something that you want them to be. They are who they are.
And that's what Mr. Palmer talked about a couple of times. He said, you have to change the law in your mind. As a clinical therapist, we call it cognitive restructuring. We call it cognitive reconditioning, meaning you have to be aware of what you're dealing with, and you have to modify your thoughts in a time where anything that's related to being a man is held on a level of contempt. The older I get, the more I see the world for what it is, it doesn't bother me anymore. I do believe in the concept of love, but I believe in love within reason. And nothing surprises me anymore about modern women. There are some good sisters that are striving to do the right thing. Shout out to the good sisters on the panel. But by and large, it's hard to find a very virtuous woman that's going to hold you down and help you meet your mandates on this earth. And I think the quicker men understand that they won't be frustrated or bothered by the things that they see. Keep listening.
If they present themselves as a woman that's not worth you, and I'm going to say it again, a woman that is not worth you, then do not demean yourself and give yourself to a woman that's not worth you.
Yes, sir.
And I would say that for the women.
Right.
If
Same for the women.
Not
right.
worth you.
Right.
Then don't give yourself to them. You have to know your worth.
Right.
Once you know your worth, your standard will weed these cats out.
Amen.
Right. I totally agree. And you know what, Bolo? I don't know how old you are, brother.
49. I'm going to be 50 this year.
Okay, you and I, we're from the same generation, class of 90 here. Well, supposed to be in the class 89, but you 90, 91. And things have taken a change for the worse, in my opinion. I'm gonna go back, and I'm gonna say this, Bolo. I had some people on my panel, shout out security boss, and I love her. We agree on some things, some agreements we don't, but I do respect her. And you might not agree with me 100%, and that's fine. I still respect you as my brother. But there was a time, Bolo, we didn't say words like partner. That's a neoliberal construct.
No doubt.
It's no damn such thing as no partner. You're not my partner. You're my wife. And the churches, liberalism has snuck into the churches. It snuck into the psyche of a lot of these women now, Bolo, that when we try to bring clarity, folks get in their feelings because they don't understand their purpose. I told women this. I've said on one of the shows I had when I said your loyalty is his royalty. No doubt, your loyalty is his royalty because see, before Eve came, Adam's purpose was his worship of Yahweh. It was Yahweh first. His purpose, which was his dominion, the name of the animals, subduing the earth. But the woman came out of him to help him foster his vision. But see, what women don't understand because they are creatures of feeling, a true woman understands when she's a Proverbs 31 woman that a man can always put God and his purpose first, because when that man is putting God and his purpose first, then that woman is going to be taken care of on the back end. As I said earlier, Bolo, if you came in late, the great teacher said that I'll be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. That's what Jesus said. And so when you lift him up, then he's going to take care of you on the back end because he's a righteous man. But see, so many modern women said that they are spiritual, but they're really carnal. They don't understand kingdom principles. They want the man to think based on how they feel,
yes, sir,
instead of thinking based on principle. Men do things based on principle, not on feelings. Like I said earlier, the woman is insular, so she needs to receive the love of a man, which is the eros. But the man is masculine. He's principle. His phallus symbolizes the scepter, which is the royal scepter, which symbolizes principle. So when she takes care of the phallus and respects the phallus or respects the principle, then that man feels loved and respected. But see, too many modern women try to subjugate or change the trajectory of how men think based on how they feel. And see, I've always said, Bolo, a woman can't really be a wife until she knows how to control her feelings. When she can control her feelings, she's ready for the mission of that relationship, but also ready for the mission of the kingdom. But you can't be in kingdom if you're in your feelings, because see, what will happen, you will become a slave to your feelings, which in essence will make that man become a slave to you, which in essence will make him operate in idolatry. And so men got to understand that when they come into that relationship, you don't neglect your woman. You do love her. You do protect her and guide her, but she's not going to come first in your life.
Problem. That's the problem, Kosher. The problem is the church is lying.
Yes.
The problem is the church right now, it's a business,
Yeah,
right?
it's a business, right?
See, when we look at the Old Testament, it was a shadow of what was to come. The church was always the people. This is why Christ had beef with the Pharisees and Sadducees, because he never taught in a building. He always taught in the highways and the byways. He came to teach the people that you are the church. In fact, he said, who can put me in a building made with man's hands?
Right.
What the church is not teaching is this. Men and women are created equal in love.
Right.
In creation. But we're not equal in purpose.
Right.
This is what they're not teaching. Right. God loves the eagle as much as he loves the mouse, but he created the eagle to eat the mouse.
Right.
This is what they're not giving them. They're not giving them truth. They're giving them idolatry. Exactly what you said. I wanted to tell you, slow it down. Because when we talk the way we talk right now, there's so much that people miss.
Right.
Because there's so much information to take in, and what you just said, that little 5 minutes of what you said, good God. There's so much that cats miss.
Right.
And and women, they take it as we're trying to put our foot on their neck.
But not.
And it's not. You've been given something that you shouldn't have never been given.
Right.
So we're just trying to correct the course. Because like you said, if I keep my father first, by him, see, this is what women don't understand. What they don't understand is by me being a God-fearing man, that makes me more of a servant than it makes me a king.
Right.
This is what they don't get. They think that by me being head or king or whatever name you want to give me, you don't understand that I have to make sure that my home is right. The Lord tells you, make sure before you get my house right, get yours right. Make sure my children are good. Make sure my wife is good. My better half, as they say. this is what they don't understand. There's more strength in their femininity than there is in masculinity. See, women don't understand that it's a vibrational thing. Everything is vibrations, right? It's like you walk into a room and I can say, yo, kosher and traditional, in CG, yo, something is wrong here. I just walked into the room and I know y'all got beef. It's the vibration. So when I'm talking to my woman, it's a vibration. Femininity and masculinity are perfectly created for each other. When you try to redefine them, then we have the problem. Houston, we have a problem. So when a woman talks to me in her femininity, there is so much strength in it that I'm going to respond accordingly, right? I'm going to respond accordingly. Jezebel had Ahab wrapped around her finger, not through masculinity, but through femininity.
Through femininity,
he had him bugging the hell out, doing all wicked stuff, not through, yo, son, this is what we got to do. No, she was doing that, honey.
Right.
You need to build these idols and such and such. And he tapped into that.
He tapped into it,
when you match my vibration of masculinity, now I'm no longer dealing with the vibration of femininity. Now I gotta match that intensity. Now I gotta match it, and then nothing gets done. Right? Nothing gets done. So now we have people that are baseball players trying to be hockey players, and hockey players trying to play soccer. Everyone is playing the wrong damn game. When our job is to serve the Father. My job is to serve him. Your job is to serve him. And together we serve him. But there's a position.
It's a position.
In how we do this.
How we do it, right.
In the church. I'm so hard on the church. I'm so disappointed in the church. Because this is the thing that messes me up and it gets me angry, Kosher. That you have all of these men and women that listen to these pastors that talk about bread.
And once again, as I told you guys earlier, pastor many times has a Machiavellian spirit. As I told you, that's part of the dark triad of personalities. The Machiavellian is cunning. He's manipulative. He uses favor and politicism to get his needs taken care of. And as I said earlier, many times the Machiavellian feeds the narcissistic supply, which in essence hold our women renderless and reduces their ability to be the best versions of themselves.
And talk about, the prosperity gospel. And nobody has a Bible open or a pen and paper. Nobody's writing nothing down. They're just listening to them, and it's this feel-good prosperity. It's this feel-good thing, and they walk out. And if you pull 10 different Christians to the side, they'll have 10 different breakdowns. When the Lord tells you, you all should speak the same thing. So what does that mean? That means that when I go home, I sit down with my wife and we go through it. She asks me a question and I make sure she gets it. That's what church is supposed to be. This is church. Not no damn building that I got to give bread to where the pastor's rolling around the G5 and I go home to the projects. When the family structure is broken. When you have men that don't have a place to speak. Thank God for you.
Right.
And it's just crazy, man.
It is crazy, brother. And I'm a licensed therapist. So, most therapists won't touch what I'm doing, but because I am the kosher clinician, I take risks. But it's a fire in me that can't be quenched. It's not in my nature to tap dance. It's not in my nature to pander. I'm an old school archetype from the past. Up top they used to say "word is bond." That's how
word
I operate.
Is bond, my G.
Yeah, that's how I operate. Right. So I'm not like some of these simp surfers, man. They do what the woman say, and I will do what my wife said. I don't do that goofy shit. I'm gonna respect my woman, but she gonna understand order. I'm gonna show you something, man, because I think when men return back to the mantle of masculinity, we will have a more vibrant community. But I don't see it in this lifetime. I think it's gonna take some years. And I've always said, I tell women, Bolo, I said that we are equal in human essence. We essentially are equal in human essence, but we're not equal in role and design. And so many of our women have been, compromised due to the voice of the serpent, the snake whisperer.
Yes, sir.
And, so many of our women have been sabotaged because they don't listen to what masculine men are saying. And, they've been so wayward for so long that when they hear the truth, they can't receive it because it seems strange because they're operating in the flesh. But I want to show you something. I said this earlier, of the Messiah, but guess what? He doesn't rejoice in the death of the wicked.
Not at all.
So why should you? But it's on the wall because you have the heart of a servant. She's not prone to gossip, and she takes accountability, something that many of these modern women don't take. And we're in a cataclysm, Bolo. I think the writing is on the wall. The writing is on the wall, and it is what it is.
That's it.
I'm not mad. I'm not going to argue with folks. Do what you want to do. When I saw people, and like I say, I don't have to agree 100% with everything Kevin said, but I agree with a lot of things that he said. And, I didn't necessarily agree with his logic on marriage in these modern times because of the laws, even though I've been married for 26 years, but I understood his premise. But overall, I liked a lot of the things that he said, but when you start laughing at a man when he's in death and you're mocking him and whatnot, I got a problem with that because, even the gospel say that God does not rejoice in the death of the wicked. He doesn't rejoice in the death of the wicked.
Not at all.
So why should you? But they rejoice when a man's died.
Ungodly, but you're talking about ungodly people. Right. So you know what I'm saying? Because even when you quote Proverbs 31, Scripture said that the woman got up like the merchant ship. Merchant ships are early. They out in that ocean doing what they need to do. So she didn't stay home. When you read Proverbs 31, she went out and worked. She plowed the field herself because the man was out there about to go to war. So he was gone for weeks on end.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? So, when you have people, whether you agreed with Kevin Samuels or not, when you're reveling in the man's death, it says a lot about your character.
It says a lot.
My point in speaking on him on my channel about his death was, where are you with God? Because wherever Kevin Samuels is, he is.
Yes, sir. Right.
This death is a moment in time that we the one thing we have so little of is the one thing we waste so much of, and that's time.
Yes, sir. Right.
For me to say, I'm gonna see you next week, that in itself is egotistical because I don't even know if I'm gonna get up the stream and not break my neck going down the steps.
Yes, sir. That's true.
Just in it. We're supposed to live. This is why we live in the present because it's a gift.
Right. It's a
gift.
That's
why. You know what I'm saying? So people that revel in someone's death, it says a lot about their character. And what's so awesome about God is, judge not lest ye be judged. So the same way you condemned him, the same way you're gonna be condemned.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? That's why the Lord says, be careful with that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's real easy to condemn somebody. Because a lot of people think that when Christ said judge not, it meant that you can't judge nobody. No, it didn't mean that. It meant condemn. Because when the Pharisees and Sadducees brought Mary Magdalene to her, they were trying to sentence her to death.
Right.
So I can judge. I can say, yo, coach, what you doing is wrong. Or you can say, Bolo, what you doing is wrong.
Right. That's righteous judgment. That's righteous judgment.
But when you condemn somebody, when you put it in your heart to say that person is guilty and they deserve death, he deserved to die for what he was saying. That doesn't even sound right. That doesn't even sound right. So when you revel and you're happy and you're joyful in that man's death, it's being written.
It's being recorded, right?
It's being recorded.
It's being recorded, right? Right. It's definitely being recorded. And what they don't understand too, the same people that are mocking his death, they will have a date with death at some point. Every man is going to have a date with death sooner or later, and so therefore it behooves us to all be walking circumspectively, because I'm not gonna say I've been stunned. I got some things I got to work on. I
got some things. There's a lot of things I got to get right.
Right. So I'm not acting like I'm perfect, I'm holy. I got some mess with me that I'm working on. I'm very honest, but we live in very turbulent times, Bolo. You and I from the 90s, man. What is the thing, Bolo, that grieves your soul the most about these modern times? What is it about these modern times that really grieve your soul that you say to yourself, I never thought it would got this bad?
There's no critical thinking, man.
I agree.
There's no critical thinking, bro. There's none. I sit here and look at some of the things that these cats talk about. All they talk about is trauma. If you put them in a situation, they can't think their way out of a paper bag. They just don't have it. They don't think past 2 steps.
They don't, right?
They don't. And you sit there and you're looking at them. You're like, so you didn't think that this would happen? To every action there's a reaction? Nah, I didn't think that way. And I'm like, wow, bro. And I truthfully say this, man. I say this all the time. And I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. God has to come back in this generation.
I agree.
Because if he doesn't come back, the generation behind us, dog, the generation behind us, if he comes back, then we're finished.
I totally agree, man. The writing is on the wall, man.
The writing is on the wall, man. These cats behind us ain't serving God. These cats behind us are falling victim to what the television. Everything that's said to them, they go with it. They look at the podcast, the Fresh and the Fits, and all these different things, all these different men that are selling them lies. They're not even living the lifestyle that they're trying to send you.
Right.
These cats are looking for a way out. And that's why, your channel and my channel is so important, because we give a platform for men that don't think that there's another way.
Right.
We tell them that there is a different way.
There's a different way, right?
There is a different way. You don't have to pay me $1,000 for an hour of consultation, and then I tell you, go over to my, go to my other website where you got to pay me more bread. We don't do that. Right. We give it to them because we know that the Lord going to take care of us.
Right.
That's what we know.
Yes, sir. And what they don't understand, Bolo, we're going to sign off in a minute, man. Everything on this earth is fleeting. You're not going to take none of this stuff with you. My sister, man, bless her heart, she died back February the 14th, I believe. And
my condolences, brother.
Yeah. She had a big head. She was a rebel for a while, but I think she got her soul right. I love her. I prayed for her for years. She had a $500,000 home, had a Land Rover, a Range Rover, whatever you call it. Had the sporty one. So I think the sporty one is the Land Rover. And but you know what? Guess what? When she died, none of that stuff mattered. When Kevin Samuels took his last breath, none of that matters. But some of these guys get caught up in pride and, I got bigger channels, I got more subscribers, I got more money. Well, you're a fool, because the gospel say, "Fool, tonight your soul shall be required of thee." None of that stuff would matter in the afterlife. I'd rather have integrity on this side and liberate as many men as I can, because I'm storing up treasures on earth. I'm not storing up my treasures I'm in heaven, not on earth. I'm not storing up my treasures here because it's all going back to the dust.
All temporal.
It's all temporal, but these cats, man, I'm not knocking the man's hustle.
But see, that's the point that I was making. They don't see time. They only see what's right in front of their face. So their thought process is, listen, man, I ain't gonna live forever, so I might as well enjoy my life while I'm here. Oh no, doctor, you really don't get it. Your life is not meant for you to enjoy it. Your life is meant to be sacrificed to the Lord here. You enjoy it in the next place. So they don't understand that. So when they get caught up into thinking, doesn't mean that you don't have fun. Doesn't mean that me and Kosher can't go out for a drink and politic, talk about sports. Right. It doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that we can't, the brothers can't get together or the sisters can't get. It doesn't mean that at all. But the point of the matter is, you don't live your life for you. Period. So this society, being a modern man and a modern woman in this world, it teaches you not to see past your nose. And that's the problem. We do not do it, especially, D just said it. They kick that Aleister Crowley thought process. Do as thou wilt. Do you. Right. Do whatever you want to do. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the enemy pushes. That's what Satan pushes. Do you. You know what I'm saying? You want to eat. You want to taste. When God tells you, dogs, chill. You know what I'm saying? If you find, a lot of men quote this scripture. A man findeth a wife. It's a good thing. But they don't look at it's a double-edged sword. For a man to find a good wife, you have to be a good husband.
That's true.
This is what they don't get. What am I submitting to? If I'm a woman, what am I submitting to, my G?
I agree.
I have to submit to whom you represent. See, men keep thinking that when a woman submits, that's her giving her life to you. That's what she's doing. Why should she submit? You're taking godly principles and applying it to a carnal life. It don't work that way. God is not going to give one of his diamonds, one of his jewels, to a dirtbag. It just doesn't work. And that goes either way. He's not going to give a good woman that follows him to a man that doesn't. He's not going to give a bad woman to a man that follows him. It doesn't happen that way. He's going to match the two because these two belong together, because that's how he wanted it to work. So we're not even on the same frequency. We can't even see past it. We keep saying, where's the good man? You know, women are saying, where the good man at? Where the good man at? You know why you can't see him? Because you ain't a good woman.
Right. I totally agree, brother. Cool Gent, real quick, man. We're gonna sign off in a minute. Bolo, thank you, brother. We'll do another show at some point, man. No doubt. Cool Gent, how you doing, sir? What's going on, brother?
How you doing, brother? Coach, shout out to all you brothers, man. Respect. Thank you for having me on your panel at this time. I want to say a little bit, add on to this conversation. Shout out to Bolo TV, man. Oh my God, man. This topic the culture has, like, thank you so much for this, because this is right up my alley. And as a Yah-fearing man myself, and I finally got a chance to listen, so I want to add on some things to scripture based, you know, from the word of the Most High. You know, what men and women are supposed to be doing is seeking first ye the kingdom of God and all his righteousness. Matthew chapter 6 verse 33. That's what everyone's supposed to be doing, though. You know, and I know a lot of women. It's two scriptures out there I know of that righteous men look for, like they women supposed to be are supposed to be when they will have their righteous woman. Their Proverbs 31, and this Proverbs 31 verse 11 and 12. You know, and let me see real quick. I don't want to hold y'all up because I kind of got caught off guard and I was like on the highway stuff. So it talks about, you know, the heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he have no lack of gain. And this in verse 12, it says she does him good and not evil all the days of her life. So those are like those two scriptures that righteous, you know, Yah-fearing men look for from a woman. You know, a woman that's a Proverbs 31 woman. And as long as, like I said, he's a righteous man and he's on his road, he's on his purpose, like the Most High will bring those two people together. But since the enemy has divided us, you know, in this generation right now, this is where we are. And this is why everything is so messed up, because we don't want to follow the word of God. And this is why we're just like separated, because nobody wants to live right. And the way this generation is going right now, if they don't get right, like have more righteous men teaching the younger and the older women teaching the younger women, then it's going to be doomed, man. That's going to be it.
Yeah, man. Well, I think it's all right, guys. That was part of a show. Yes, Law. Only God can judge me. I'm going to drop the link. I want some of the men and women to come up. Let's have a panel discussion. I think I've done an adequate job thus far. Guys, get the likes up. You guys have done an awesome job. If you have not donated to the channel, donate to Cash App, $7 Smalls, as I appreciate what you guys have been doing, men and women. Also donate to PayPal or also to Cash App. But if you don't have anything to donate monetarily, if you guys share the content, you help me with the stream. I appreciate to all that have donated thus far on tonight. Now, so I'm going to drop the link. Let's have a conversation. I have three prevailing questions I want to ask you guys as you call in. So we're going to call in. I have three prevailing questions, and I want to ask you guys those thus said questions. And the questions are, what was your experiences growing up in church? What did the church teach you about modern women? And what's your take on the modern church? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I think this will be a good discussion, a good chance to have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Because until we begin to self-introspect and see how some, not all, move in circles or move in silence, it's going to continue to hold us or put us in a state of dysfunction. Shout out to my man Bolo TV. The link has been dropped. Bolo, feel free to come up. If you want to. Dr. Thunder, if you're around, Dr. Thunder, you can come up as well. You and Bolo, or whoever want to come up. The link has been dropped, guys. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about this conversation, because It all goes back to what I was saying. Yes, Lord, who judged me? Yes, Lord, only God can judge me. And it's one of the thinking errors, one of the many thinking errors. One of the many thinking errors that we have, and we have to have a conversation, because that's what it's all about.
Say yes. 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 Oh Lord. Say yes. Say yes. Oh.
He has to make it.
All right, so the link has been dropped. Let's have a conversation. Dr. Thunder, if you're around, feel free to pop in. Bolo, I had you on the last show about a week ago or two, and we talked about all for my man, because men need to feel like they're loved and honored. And listen, guys, we're going to differ in some areas. I don't care about different. It's okay. There's some good brothers that I rock with on these platforms. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. Some of it is a matter of interpretation. Some of it is a matter of experiences, and it's okay. But that's why we have the conversation. I respect all you brothers from different backgrounds. We ain't gonna agree on everything, but that's fine. That's why we have conversations. I don't expect you guys to agree with everything I say. That's fine, as long as you're respectful, because if you get disrespectful, you can get this work. But in the meantime, we can have a conversation as men, because that's what men do. We come together and we have conversations. So shout out to my man, Bolo TV. He's in the house. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, brother. How you doing? Bless up, bless up. What's going on?
Bless up. Yeah, this is a response to something that I saw, and I titled it, Bolo, Yes, Lord. That's how we say it in the South. Only God can judge me. And Bolo, that's really tied to thinking errors. And see, a woman can't be all for her man, Bolo, when she have thinking errors and when she have a condition called ego. So and many modern women, Bolo, have a satanic ego because they are victims of a condition called delusions. They are delusional in their thinking. And when you try to give them evidence, many of these modern preachers, as I said earlier, have Machiavellian tendencies, which are part of the dark triad, which more or less assuages some of the narcissistic traits that these modern women have, which in essence is part of their narcissistic supply. And so, you can't tell them anything. They go to the clubs on Sundays, Saturdays, they get in there like the women in the world. And then, they come to church and say, yes, Lord, only God can judge me. How would you like to add to the conversation, brother, about this level of dysfunction that continues to permeate in our culture?
Well, the one thing we have to do is start to understand the book. We need to start reading it ourselves. I find that a lot of times that when people go to church, they take the opinion or the breakdown of the pastor, priest, bishop, whoever, and they don't actually get into the book themselves. So when people say only God can judge me, first of all, they need to understand what it meant. It meant only God can condemn me.
Right.
Man can't condemn, but damn it, I can judge. The Lord told me I can judge.
Right.
When you punished your child, you made a judgment call. When I say kosher, you bugging out. That's a judgment call. Mm-hmm. So we need, this society puts this up there so that no one can get checked. Mm-hmm. They don't want to set up a framework where you can say, Bolo, you bugging. Mm-hmm. We need to get you back together. We need to get you back on the right path. We're trying to set up a thing where, like children, like spoiled brats. You can't tell nobody nothing because nobody wants to hear it. This is my truth. This is my truth. This is my truth. Spoiled brats. And what happens with spoiled brats, when you have children just running around doing anything and everything, the people that really control society, they're the ones that's using us as puppets while they're setting things up. And we don't understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have no clue. Right, so when we're looking at church, they pander to the women. This is why men left.
Right,
this is why men didn't deal with church.
Right.
At all. Because church right now, it's an act. Church is a show.
Yeah, it's a show.
It's like the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is now. Everyone is fake. Everyone is coming up there to see the latest gossip or what someone is wearing or who's sleeping with who or what's doing what. No one is there to understand the word, because if they understood the word, they would know that church starts with you. I don't have to go to church to start church. Church starts when I wake up in the morning. Church is here. So there is no specific building that I need to go to actually commune with the Father. So, you know, we have to revamp, because we've been brain dirty. We need to be brainwashed. The way we've been taught God on this side of the planet is totally off and totally bonkers. And that's why we have our people bugging out.
No doubt, no doubt. I like something that GCLA said. He said the black church was the first black institution. It was autonomous from directives from the white church. The black church was a gathering place for the black community. You know, one of the things that's so fictitious, erroneous, and foolish is people prevaricate and assume that when black people more or less assuage some of the tenets of theology, that they're worshiping white Jesus, which is goofy, by the way, because most black people don't equivocate the God of the Bible as a white man. I know I don't. Christ was a man of color. He was a man of color. Some say he was Hamilio-Semitic. The first ones to convey the gospels with Ethiopians. And, you know, because people are biblically illiterate, they don't understand that the gospel talks about the Ethiopians, which were the original people, some of the original people. They don't understand that they talk about Simon of Niger that helped carry the gospel, helped carry the cross. The reference of black people are all written throughout the Bible, especially in the Table of Nations, especially in Genesis. But the problem is, because white men use the gospel to subvert or more or less condition us to think that, you know, because we saw relics of Christ, then people tend to assuage or assume that Christ, we were worshiping a white Jesus, but Jesus was not a white man. You can't be white and be from that portion of the world. Most blacks took what was called liberation theology. They didn't take the parts of the gospel from white people where it was used to subjugate black folks. Liberation theology came out of the Old Testament, where black people understood that slavery or the evils of shallow slavery were wrong. Chattel slavery or shallow slavery was totally different than indentured servitude. Shallow slavery was the worst form of slavery. So, you know, black folks don't, you know I didn't, because I studied history and theology for years, but they never more or less agree with that Jesus was this white man, because he wasn't white. He was not a white man. It's impossible. The original humans, even though some disagree with it, had to be people of color. Some would say that they were black. You have the black Jews of Ethiopia called the Falasha. You have the Jews of Zimbabwe called Limba. They're called the Limba Jews. And so the presence of blackness is replete throughout not only the scripture, but also it's replete in anthropology and also history. It's a very powerful book, but the problem is most folks don't read it. They come in with what's called confirmation bias, where they already have biases towards the book based on what they've been through. And when you come in with confirmation bias, then you cannot see the book for what it is. It's a powerful book if you know how to look at it through pretext, context, and also post-text. But it makes me upset because, like CGLA said, we understood that the Bible that the white man was trying to give black folks was not authentically sound. It was not authentic as it relates to liberation. And that's why you have to have an open mind, and you cannot come in with confirmation bias, because you have confirmation bias, you will not see it for what it is. What's your take on that, brother?
Well, see, that's why they didn't allow us to read. Mm-hmm. Because when you open up that book, you realize Songs of Solomon said, "I'm black but comely." You'd also read in Acts where they called two of the 12 disciples niggers, right? The Latin word which means dark. Mm-hmm. So we have to understand that for a book that was written by white people, it sure talks a whole lot about black people.
Yes, right.
From the beginning to the end. How could Moses be mistaken? I mean, if you look at it, every movie you watch, the Egyptians are white.
Yes.
Now, Moses was mistaken as the Pharaoh's grandson.
Yes, sir. Right.
So how can he be mistaken as the Pharaoh's grandson
if it didn't look like him?
Exactly. Right. So these are things that. But if you don't open up the book and read it, if you don't open up the book and understand what's being told, if you don't understand the context, even the word human. When you look at the word hue means color.
Yes. Right. Earthman. Hue. Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah. Right. I agree.
are the original people. So to even have that conversation, it really it shows the person, it shows you where that person is in reading, understanding, and studying, and understanding who they are and where they stand. So when we open up this book, we have to understand that this book is literature. It's a historical document. So when we sit here and think that Christ is white, and Revelations 1:14 distinctly talks about a man whose foot was bronze, as if it burned in a furnace, you can't get white out of that.
Right.
You can't
I agree.
get white out of that woolly hair. You can't get white out of that.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? So if you don't read, if you just go to church and if you just go to church for the entertainment, then you're gonna stay dead. And what I mean by dead is spiritually. We're trying to get spiritually awoke. So we understand as a people that there is something out there. Our problem is we don't know who, what, or where, and how to find him. So they taught us not to read. They used a book, and here's the crazy thing. We're so used to being spoon-fed by white people that if a black person comes, automatically, we want credentials, we want 50 different texts, we want where you got it from. But when a white dude say it, automatically it's taken as, this is what it is.
Right.
It's subliminal and subconscious to the trauma that was given to us in history. So we have to understand that when you open up the book and you read it yourself, it opens you up to a new understanding of communicating and connecting with God. And this is what we have to understand. You don't need to go to church. These dudes are hired and paid wolves. That's what they are. When you're looking at the Creflo Dollars and the TD Jakes and all these different dudes, these cats, they give you a prosperity gospel. The more bread you put in, the more your blessings get grown. There's no way in the scriptures where it talks about that. But you're not going to know that if you don't have that personal relationship with God. So we need to open up the book. We need to start to understand what's being said, what's being read, write down what this guy is saying, so that when you go home, the scripture says to rightly divide the word of truth. To rightly divide it. So how do I know if Kosher is telling the truth if I don't write it down and go back myself and study it and then come back and go, Kosher, you was on point. You was absolutely right. We have to understand that your relationship is personal with the Father. But salvation is inclusive. It's for everyone. But you have to be in the race correctly.
Right. No, I agree. I do believe in fellowshipping with the brethren. I believe in assembly with the brethren. But I do also agree with you that the modern church, not all, but many have been corrupt. And they're corrupt to the point that black men feel like they have no solace. It's not a black man issue, it's a man issue. But I think it's more prevalent in the black church because you tend to see the tentacles of a matriarchal culture more so manifest in the black church than you do in other churches. And I think men are looking for answers and solutions. And some might ask the question, Bolo, why does a therapist talk about faith and spirituality? Well, I'm going to explain it to you. As a licensed clinical therapist, we call it the biopsychosocial spiritual. Spirituality is a part of mental wellness. Actually, many times through research, it can be part of what's called a psychosomatic response. Spirituality can be health not only to the body, but also health to the mind. And so when we take the elements of spirituality and add it to mental wellness, it helps you become better. I said that there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized. And in the Hebrew, kosher means complete. Spirituality and faith is part of that. That was the war language that carried our ancestors over in the past. We prayed our way through some of the ravages of slavery and Jim Crow racism. Our grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers were prayer warriors. And people might say, well, you were still slaves. But see, God don't move the way we move. He said, my thoughts are not your thoughts and my ways are not your ways. The Egyptians were held captive for years because God, at the end of the day, knew the hearts of men. But when you hear the terminology, only God can judge, and you talked about it. But let me ask you a question. Growing up, what was your experiences growing up in church? And shout out to James Turner, and I'm going to let you bring it in too, James. But what was your experiences growing up in church, and what did the church teach you about women?
The one thing, a church never sat well with me. It just didn't feel well. I was raised a Roman Catholic.
Right, respect.
So things that, I'm Haitian and Asian. So being raised in the Catholic Church, it just didn't sit well. Just the, the way things just seemed too feminine for me.
Right.
And then, the way they would talk about God, the way they preach it didn't fit, they don't get you ready for women at all. They don't teach you anything about women, at least when I was growing up, right? They didn't teach you anything. They didn't prepare you. When these are supposed to be our teachers, our leaders, these are supposed to be the men that are supposed to guide the next generation, and the women are supposed to guide the next generation of women. We got no information, no schooling on what we should look for in a woman, how we should treat a woman, how we should treat ourselves. We didn't get none of these things. These things, there was a disconnect. Let me say, they didn't make it personal. And this is why, the Lord wants you to make this personal. This is why we're supposed to be living testimonies. So when I connect with Kosha, I'm connecting through my testimony with him and then point him towards or give him an introduction towards Christ. When I make it cold and there is no connection between him and I, we can't connect, and he can't understand why I'm bringing this awesome, dynamic God to him. And none of that was taught. When it came to women, man, it was totally left out. Now, today, it's heavily weighted towards women. Today, they don't teach anything about men being strong. They teach men to be held accountable and responsible. But when it comes to women in the church, they let them get away with everything. But they want to give them the authority of a woman. They want the accountability of a child and the respect of a grown adult. And you can't have it that way. You have to pick one.
I love that, man. I told somebody about that it's very powerful what you said. And that's why we need to have these conversations, because brothers are looking for hope. But they just feel like most modern churches don't more or less address masculine issues, or they minimize the importance of masculinity, which in essence leave a lot of men renderless. Mr. Turner, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, brother, how you doing? Hey, Barlow, what's going on, man?
I'm good, my brother. How are you?
It's all good. It's all good.
And so I want to ask you a question, James. When you hear the moniker, and we're going to end the stream in a few minutes, shout out to the panel, but when you hear the moniker, only God can judge me, and then they'll turn around and say, yes, Lord. Not yes, Lord, but yes, Lord. That's how we say it in the South. What resonates through your head when you hear that, what appears to be an oxymoron or a contradiction?
When I hear that, immediately, it tells me that when someone says that only God can judge me, then that tells me that they don't want to hear it or want to accept it from anybody else who's judging them or see them doing something wrong or even right. So it's like they'll say, well, if they're doing something wrong or something like that, or something that's, not agreeable with the way life should be, I think, in accordance to especially the word, then they'll say, well, you know what? Only God can judge me. Only God can judge me. And that and the only thing that tells me is that they are looking at the fact that they think that they think that the only God that exists is of a spiritual nature, something that's spooky, something that you can't see, and that's not necessarily correct. So when they hear that, they're like, okay, well, men or women can't judge you. Only the spirit can judge you. But if you're not in the right spirit, then you really have no place to be judged. So that's what I hear when I hear that. And yes, Lord is trying to give them affirmation of something that they just heard. But usually when you hear yes, Lord, it's something that they agree with, that makes them feel good, that tickles their ear, that tickles their fancy. It's not the truth, because when they hear the truth, a lot of times, for example, you hear when you hear some churches talk about therapy, then it's crickets throughout the throughout the congregation. You know what I mean? When they hear about, okay, well, you shouldn't be, wearing skirts that are, way past your, your kitty cat, or you looking like you coming to church looking like you just came out of the club. They don't want to, and I'm speaking particularly for the women for the most part. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear what makes them feel good. They want to hear more or less about, okay, well, God's gonna bless me with a house. God is gonna bless me with a car. And look, man, the Bible, the Bible has nothing to do with that kind of wealth. He didn't say, but now, don't misunderstand me. God in His Word didn't say, not to be smart with everything that's given to you by God. But when He's talking about wealth, God was never even talking about money. There was no discussion about it. So I don't even know where they even got that twisted. But since they do, okay. But when they talk about a blessing, they're not talking about health. They're not talking about psychological or emotional health. They're not talking about any of that. They're looking at it when God says, "Okay, well, God, I'm praying to God to give me this house. I'm praying to God to give me this card. I'm praying to God to give me more money. I'm giving God to give me this job and whatnot." God ain't talking about none of that. Not in this particular book here. So when I hear stuff like, especially Yes, Lord, usually it's something that they agree with or something that that people, that it feels good to hear from people, as opposed to what is the truth about the things that they need to deal with and not deal with.
Let me send a special shout out to hold tight. Let me send a special shout out to hold tight, Black Rock Den for that $5 super sticker. Thank you, Black Rock Den. Big ups to the Kosher Commission. Shout out to that brother. Special shout out to Amazi. He said your character as a man is judged, not titles. Thank you, Amazi. Appreciate it, brother. Okay, all right, good. All right. So also, and thank you, Red Lipstick Vibes. Thank you, dear, for popping in. I want to hear your point as well. And so what did the church teach you, Turner, about women? What did the church teach you about modern women that left you renderless when it came down to standing on heteronormative masculine principles? What did the church not teach you?
Well, back in the day, long story short, everything that was taught in the church for me was taught from a relationship between me and God or someone else than God. It was never a talk about, an in-depth talk about how to, distribute the love of God, onto people. So when it came to, relationships with the opposite sex, man, they stayed way, way far away from that conversation. Never heard anything about, particularly about family and what, well, I won't say about family, but they only talked about family when it came to, drama and stuff like that, how, and they always go to David and stuff like that. But when it comes to how to deal with women or how women should deal with men or, or masculinity or femininity and how you should act and stuff like that, particularly the church that I went to, you never hear about that. And to this very day, I still don't hear about it. It's like Father's Day is coming up. Now I'm gonna tell you, Kosher, for the longest time, I used to go to church on Father's Day, and every freaking time I went to church on Father's Day, I would always get disappointed. And what I mean by disappointed is that in comparison to Mother's Day is highly celebrated. Everybody comes, everybody is dressed up, flowers are flowing, all the ladies are happy and so forth and so on. And, and I guess that's cool for the most part. But when it comes to Father's Day, you hear, a lot of times you hear people snickering. I don't know my father, or they come in and talk, or the ladies will come in and say, I'm the mother and the father. Oh, I'm like, oh, stop with all that. You ain't got no idea what you talking about when you say you're the mother and the father. There's no way you could even muster that relationship because you're way, way, way unqualified for that. And I know that for a fact. But when it comes to Father's Day, it was always a sermon of condemnation. And one time I even walked out, he was in the middle of preaching. I even walked out of the church. I didn't want to hear it anymore. Every time you hear about what's happening with men or with fathers or with dad, or whatever the case may be, it's hardly ever anything positive, except when it comes to who's the oldest, who's the youngest, and everybody's in between. You have the old. They'll tell people to stand up. Like if you're 90 plus, please stand up. If you're 80 plus, so forth and so on down the line until the youngest. But that's really all you hear about men and the things that we do that's correct.
Right.
Okay. But when it comes to, what is being what is it like to be a man, or what is being a man? You don't hear that directly, and you certainly don't hear that in relationship to how do you deal with women in that way, and how the women are supposed to deal with men, so that we move towards a union together to become married. And they do not deal with marriage at all.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do it at all. So I'll leave it there.
Right. How you doing, Red Lipsticks Vibes? And thank you, dear, for popping in. How would you like to add to the conversation? You grew up in church, and when you hear the terminology, yes, Lord, only God can judge me, how does that resonate to you being a woman? And what are you seeing as some of the disparities in the church that are leaving you more or less frustrated as well?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Peace to the panel. Hi, Bolo. That's my brother. Where do I start, Lord? Definitely the church has changed from when I grew up in church, since I was like a baby, really. Mm-hmm. And my parents, my dad was a pastor, mom, first lady. And I grew up in the Pentecostal Apostolic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it in the chat where I said from my point of view, I see a lot of change when the church started to adapt to the ideas of the world. Mm-hmm. When they started to incorporate things from other religions, other denominations, and this is what I think is the cause of a lot of the problems in the church. When I was growing up in the church, your list that you had up was on spot on. The women were totally different. We were taught differently.
Taught different, right?
We were taught differently. We were taught to be modest. We were taught to be, submissive. We were taught to be polite and move in grace. And these are the things that the mothers in the church and my mom, the first lady would teach us. When James was talking, when he said he didn't see a lot of things. He doesn't see a lot of things in the church. That's true. All those things that we're talking about were thrown out the door. And now it's all about prosperity, or what can I get, or,
Yes.
Politics. And a lot of churches are talking politics now. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the teachings that the young ladies were getting, they're not getting anymore. I can remember the times like, my mom would hold classes teaching the young ladies how to present themselves, the ones that are looking for husbands. We would have classes for that. We would have classes for how to be a submissive wife, but those types of things are no longer being taught in the church anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a big problem.
Yes, ma'am. Right. And how do you think that impacts the wellness of men? Because see, realistic vibes, men need to feel whole and well in order to perform well. I've always said that if you protect his six, he will protect your six. And part of the inner sanctum of masculinity, once again, is is that special place to where only God and a few other men can go. And just like in the holiness of holies, the Levites can only go into the Ark of the Covenant, and they were the more or less servants of Yahweh. But many men, Red Lipstick Vibe, feel like they don't have any hope in these turbulent times. They don't see any redeeming value in the modern church. And because of that, it's impacting their mental wellness. Because some don't see the correlation between faith and mental health. But it's a strong correlation because that's what kept our ancestors sane in the past. But how would you like to add to that?
So, well, as you can see, the men are being pushed out of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say it's the pastor. It's from what I see, it's a more of a power struggle.
Right.
A lot of times, the pastor would see the men as a threat. Mm-hmm. Because the women, we the women are, it's more women in the church than men. We are the biggest consumers, meaning we spend the most money. So the pastors are gaining control over the ones that's going to feed his pockets. So you know what I'm saying? So when you have other men in the church, the husbands, they can control that a little bit. I've actually seen, women will disrespect their husband for the pastor. I've seen women that will say, the husband wants something done or they need to do something. She would say, I have to ask my pastor.
Oh my God, that's out of order, man.
Way out of order.
All the time.
And it happens all the time.
I wish a wife would do that. I'll get up in front and check the pastor. I wish a woman would tell me I got to ask the pastor. She would be by herself because the family became before the church. The family was here before the church. So how are you going to ask a pastor about something? And if he's a true man of God, he's going to tell you, no, you go follow with your husband. A true pastor or a true man of God is not going to defer to his own power, but he's going to defer to the power of that husband. And that lets you know, like you were saying, that a lot of these pastors are in the flesh. They're carnal minded. They don't care about the flock. It's about pleasing their flesh. Because many of them are sleeping with the women. We're not saying all, because we know Red Lipstick Vibe. There's some good churches. There's some good brothers that are trying to do the right thing. I'm not going to put all churches in a bad category, because there are some mosques where there's infidelity and bad behavior, and also in some of these synagogues. But many times we tend to overgeneralize and assume all churches are bad. Well, no, they ain't all bad, because I grew up in one, and I was a Sunday school superintendent, and also I was a teacher. And also I was in the choir. So the churches back then was totally different than the churches now. And it's a show. It's a puppet show now.
It is.
And when masculine men begin to speak up, because a lot of the women have never seen true masculine authority, Red Lipstick Vibes, they don't know how to respond to it. What's your take on that?
Exactly. And the key thing you said when you were, they're not true men of God. You have so many, it's going to be kind of off the rail, but you have so many people that becomes pastors because they know how to read a couple of scriptures. And then a month's time, they're a bishop.
Right.
So
right, they're a bishop,
right. And so, everybody wants to be a pastor. Everybody wants a church. You have like 5 churches right beside each other in some cities. Because everybody wants to be in charge. And and just like you said, when the men try to stand up, then the pastor's like, oh no, but then the women that are so, I don't know if I should say brainwashed, but they're so under the control of the pastor, then they started going against their husbands.
Right.
And so then that's when the men started to leave the church. Not only leaving the church, they started leaving the wives.
Right.
They started divorcing them. Like, okay, my dad would say, you're so involved in the church that you forgot how to be a wife and a mother.
Right.
And that's what becomes a problem when you're rushing to go clean the church, go cook pasta plate, but you forgot about your home. You forgot about your husband and your children.
Right.
So I think that's what the bigger, especially in the black churches, that's what happened. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. When did you graduate, dear?
1993. I'll be 47 on June 26th.
Oh yeah, you old school like me. Yeah, you with John P. Key and New Life and Commission.
Yes.
You from that generation. I did a show with Commission. Go check my archives.
Yes, I saw that. I was in the chat.
Yeah, I did a show with Carl Reed, and also I did one with Pastor Max Frank from the Winans. And, you and I grew up in a time when things were different. We weren't perfect, but we were striving to do the right thing. What do you see as a trajectory? And let me ask you another question, you don't mind me asking. Are you from the Midwest, the South, or the North, or the West?
I'm from the South, but I'm living in the North right now.
What part of the South, let me ask?
I'm from New Orleans.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
I got to watch. You might call on the ancestors. I'm just playing with you. But yeah, so what's the difference that you see now And do you see us going back to those prevailing principles, or do you see it getting worse? I think it's gotten worse, and it's getting worse.
It's going to get worse. I mean, the Bible says it's going to get worse.
Right,
Me and my
prophecy,
dad were
right.
just talking about that today. He's like, it's not going to get better. The Bible didn't say nothing about it getting better. He just
Right.
The Bible said it's going to get worse.
So wax worse and worse. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When it comes to the women, I think because when the church started to get lax on a lot of things, so then you started to be able to do all kinds of things. The shame has, for example, when a young lady would get pregnant, or you were shamed for that. Now you praise for it. You get baby showers and naming parties and gender reveals and all that. You didn't get that when you had a baby out of wedlock back then.
Right.
You sat in the back of the church. You couldn't sing on the choir. You couldn't do nothing.
Right.
You're going to sit in this.
If you came to church at all.
Exactly. So I think when there was no consequences for, bad behavior inside and outside of the church, even parenting has changed. Parents want to be the friends and not parent anymore. And we see the effects of that as well.
Right.
So that's the same ball effect that's going on in the church as well as within the homes. Like everybody's forgetting the core values and principles that we had back in the day and thinking, oh, it's old school. But guess what? That old school stuff worked.
It worked, right.
We had more marriages. We had, and the women presented themselves a different way. Now, when I talk to young ladies, they don't even know how to cook.
Right.
Don't even know how to boil water.
Right.
They don't know how to. They dress all kinds of ways. They talk to people. Their mouths. They have such potty mouths, worse than men. You couldn't do that back then.
Right.
So it's. I think when people try to include everyone and try to. What is the scripture when it says they want smooth things? They rather have their ears tickled.
Right. I know what you're talking about.
So when that started happening more and more, then you start seeing more and more of the people changing. Right. And going in the wrong direction because the pastors are preaching things that's going to make you hoop and holler.
Right.
And shout. But nothing that's going to convict your soul to do right.
Right. No doubt. I totally agree. And you know what? I remember a time where this telling the truth and preaching a sound gospel, it was just normal. People had a reverence for the church. Exactly. But now these churches are so compromised. They're so worldly. We had a lady, one of the sisters, a content creator, security boss, and she was talking about how it was shameful when she had a child out of wedlock, and the women started to attack her. They attacked her for talking. She wasn't talking about them.
I saw that.
But they attacked her for saying what I did was shameful. And, and that's why when people, talk about, listen, man, I don't see it in this lifetime. I believe the next big thing on the scene could be the rapture. I know a lot of folks don't believe that, but that's what I believe.
I believe that too. Yeah.
And because all the signs, Red Lipstick's vibe is pointing to the imminent return of the Messiah. And so, I've never seen a world where there's so much darkness and where up is down, down is up. And when you try to bring clarity and balance, people try to shame you, and people say, oh, you're crazy. And now it's getting to the point, Red Lipstick vibe, even people that don't name the name of faith, they're just regular people. They're even beginning to see that something is woefully wrong. Something is wrong with the world, and they can't put their finger on it, but they know that it's dark and very nefarious.
And you have to look, and I tell people all the time, it's stop watching the dumb stuff and watch the news sometimes, because you look at what's going on. Look outside. We're in these spaces and we're having, I love some of these content creators or whatever, but we're having the dumbest conversations instead of really addressing what's going on. There's a famine coming, you people.
Famine coming, right.
Have you started stocking up?
Right. No, you're
There's
right.
going to be rolling blackouts throughout the whole United States this summer. Are you prepared for that?
Explain what you mean about the black house. Go ahead, sis.
So what's happening is, okay, so the government is saying, oh, we trying to conserve, but I don't think that's what's happening. Okay, so because our friends overseas that start with an R, I don't want to get your channel strike.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
that's
please
going
don't.
through the war.
Right.
They have threatened us several times, and they have tested this. Y'all remember when the gas pumps things were all messed up, and when the grid in Texas, that was them. They're not going to tell you that though. So, and the more our wonderful government, do things over there, you're making the wrong people mad. And United States have been, and I think it's because of the people of God, we have been protected for a long time. However, we have become the modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. We are allowing everything and anything, and we're forgetting God. So what did God do to Sodom and Gomorrah? I believe now the hand of God's protection is moving away from United States. And we are about to feel it.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from. And it behooves everybody to be ready. On Realistic Vibes, I drop a link. Reach out to me when you get a time. Send me your number and also email. I want to ask you some questions because you have some excellent points. And let me ask you a question. A lot of women try to shame other women, Red Lipstick Vibe, and they will call you a pick-me for trying to.
I get it all the time.
How do you deal with that those shaming languages? How do you deal with it? And does it make you weary or you don't care?
It don't bother me, no. It is. Well, first of all, I never heard of the pick-me thing until I came into the YouTube spaces and I started doing my my own channel. I would get the weird, emails and stuff. But it's not being a pick-me. It's just being a chosen woman. That's just the way I was raised. My mom raised me to be a wife. My parents been together since they were 13 years old until my mom took her last breath last night.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, nice.
I had that, that experience right in front of me. I watched my mom be a wife. I watched my mom be a mother. I watched my mom also be a first lady in the church. She had her spiritual children. So I watched all these things and I was taught all these things. So it's not me being a pick-me. My mom just taught me how to be a wife.
Now, are you married, Realistic Vibes?
I'm not married yet, but I have my ring on my finger. I'm getting engaged.
Okay, good. Congrats. I'm happy for you, dear. I'm happy for you. First marriage?
Yes.
Congrats. I'm happy for you. You are a breath of fresh air, and it's hard to find such women like yourself in these modern times. You are part of what I call the remnant. You are a remnant, sister, and it's hard to find them. Kudos to you. When is your birthday? What month were you born?
June 26th. I'll be 47 on the 26th.
Okay, 27, no doubt. Mr. Dr. Dunn, how would you like to add to the conversation? And before you answer the question, the questions, when you hear women say, only God can judge me, and then they'll say, yes, Lord, as they have fun in the clubs on Saturday. What does that say to you mentally about the state of modern women?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, we're in trouble. I think that the church is supposed to be the place that sort of sets these things in order, gives us the principles, all of that. But that seems to be quite lacking these days. I did want to respond to a few things. You had another brother on here. What is his name? Bolo. So I agree with a lot of what he was saying. I would disagree with some aspects of it. There's a lot of sort of fast and loose talking about how the church is just people gathering together in the name of, in the name of Jesus.
I said something about it. I said that I do believe that brothers and sisters to come together and congregate, because the gospel says, as you see that evil day approaching, that it's good for the brethren to dwell together in the assembly. That's where power and strength is from. But I guess he was talking about the Catholic Church where he's from. But go ahead, brother.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm Orthodox, and Catholic is similar to Orthodox in many respects. I think a lot of folks, if they went to an Orthodox church, if they had any experience with the Catholic Church, they would see some similarities there. I think folks that don't know any better might think that an Orthodox church is a Catholic church, but there are seven in particular differences doctrinally, which are critical. But as far as worship style and what they call smells and bells, high church, yes, Orthodox is high church. I think but there is an issue with this idea that the church is the people. It's just the people. That's not an early church doctrine. The early church doctrine always was it's both. There is a physical representation of the church. This is one of the reasons why these old churches had a certain design, right? You see the spires stretching into the heavens as an announcement that we are doing business here, the business of worship, right? The altar, the way that the altar is designed in the churches, the fact that when you face the altar, you're facing east, right? All of that stuff, that's all early church stuff. But what we've done, especially Protestants, what they've done is they sort of have whitewashed and gotten rid of a lot of the, I think, more important and substantive components of Christianity, including stuff like fasting. In the Orthodox calendar, there are 30 weeks of fasting. 30 weeks of fasting. If you count all the days, 30 weeks. So every Wednesday and Friday, Lent, the Nativity fast, which in the West they call Advent. Then you have a Marian fast. You've got an Apostles fast. There's a couple other things on there. And the fasting is almost all Daniel fast, which is basically vegan. But then on top of that, you would include a complete fast from Saturday night when you have given your confession to be prepared to take communion, a complete fast until after you've received communion on Sunday. But there's a lot of this like discipline and that is totally missing in Protestantism in general and in the Black church in particular now. So I would argue that the early African American church is far more orthodox than the sort of white counterpart. So like, for instance, if you talk about the difference between missionary Baptist and Southern Baptist, right? Or if you talk about the difference between an AME church and a Methodist church, right? You will see that there is far more respect of, there's more pomp and circumstance, right? There's more respect and there's more honor. There is more, even with respect to the way that people dress. The fact that the music is through composed, in other words, exists throughout the entire service, as opposed to like the sort of four blank walls and a sermon sort of approach that a lot of Protestant churches have gone to. You'll have music, but the music is segregated from the service, right? It has its own place, but then it doesn't really happen except for at the end of the service during an altar call. Whereas in the Black church, you have the music throughout. All of that stuff, I would argue, is very orthodox in practice. But I think what's happened is, as the sort of leadership has switched from being very masculine, you had strong ministers, people like Martin Luther King, people like Geno Jennings. You have people like that all the time in the pulpit. And so that sort of natural order that would flow from that, in paying attention to a lot of the details, a lot of the nuance with respect to, this is how you do this. We're not going to just do it anyway. This is the way that you do this properly. So it's sort of been kind of boiled down to a lot of stuff that is not beneficial. Now, to your question about women, as far as men being sort of talked to about how to talk to women, is that or has that been part of the sort of Black church experience? And I would say no, it has not. The whole time, and I'm 47, and I've been in church my whole life. No, it has not been. No, it has not been. There has been no. There's been no specifics on even the sort of respect that a man should have for himself, and what he should allow, what he should be okay with somebody else treating them like. That language has been, I think, remarkably missing. But yeah. And the last thing I wanted to clear up is there is some phenomenological language in Revelation about the feet of Christ being like brass or burnt brass, and hair like wool, right? And often what folks will do, especially Black folks, is we will look at that and it says, see, Jesus was not white. See, because a white man doesn't have,
right. I understand.
A fro and stuff like that. But you understand that language is not to be taken. It's phenomenological. It's intended to be exaggerated, and it's also the second coming of Christ, which may or may not have anything to do with what he looked like when he was on earth, right? So I think that's pretty weak sauce with respect to making a case that he was Black. I don't think you need that. Just look at the people in that part of the world. What did they look like? They weren't lily white. But even that whole point, that whole thing is of no consequence at all. What if he was lily white with blue eyes? Would that change the message?
Yes.
Why would it change the message?
Because it's also including a people. Okay, a lot of people like to say that when we talk about Hebrew, we're talking about people who were born and raised in Northeast Africa. And part of the truth that happened with Northeast Africa is that it was being invaded by the Europeans. And some of the Africans went into places like Italy or Turkey or places like that. And then a lot of them took parts of what was originally the church there and went to Ethiopia. They took the Ark of the Covenant and marched down to Ethiopia. So when you talk about what's the relevance behind it, the relevance is that we're talking about a people of African descent because of where they were born and the lessons that God had to teach them. So it is relevant.
But hold up though, because there's a couple things here. So the first thing is all people are of African descent. Everybody came from Africa. Okay, that's the first thing I think. And then the second thing is, now this is just hypothetical, Okay, we know that Jesus was not an albino. But let's say if Jesus was an albino, so then he was light pigment. and his eye color was also light, because that's what happens with albinos. My point is, that's such a superficial aspect of who he was. That's the least important aspect, his pigment, and I would even argue his features. Now understand, I'm not disagreeing. He wasn't lily white. I just think it's interesting that Black folks spend so much time laboring with that particular point, as if that point is going to do anything. So say, for instance, if all white folks say, you know what, we've been wrong this whole time, and Jesus really was a Black man, what does that do? I don't know that it actually solves any actual issues. I think that's my point.
Well, Dr. Dunn, here's I love your position, but I want to challenge your position to some degree. We talk about a transliteration of scripture, and some will say, some of your white exceptionists will say, and I do agree with you, but in part I do agree with you, Dr. Dunn, but they'll say it don't matter, but yet all the pictures and all the framework is of white people and Hellenism. So when you live in a world where I can see if they portray a Bible of multiple ethnicities, but when you have white exceptionism that say everybody was great except everybody was less than great except white people, then what it does, it causes a somewhat inferiority complex. I believe that the gospel many times can be taken literal when it needs to be taken literal, and it has to be taken symbolic when it has to be taken symbolic. That's like saying when Jesus said he's coming back on white horses, is he coming back on white horses, or is that a metaphor? I do believe this is literal when they say his hair was like lamb's wool. I do believe there was literal when they say his feet were like bronze. Now, it could be synonymous with his feet being burnt in fire, but it could also be tied to, him having some ethnicities or more or less physical characteristics of the anthropological people of that time and that era. So I think it can be literal, but also can also be metaphysical at the same time. But many times we tend to minimize the importance of scripture. We tend to minimize certain value points because sometimes white people will say, well, it doesn't matter what his color was, but it does, because if it didn't matter, then why do you always portray him as white? And so,
well, but I don't know that there's a diabolical, nefarious plot there for white folks to depict Jesus as white.
There was,
because as Black folks, we would depict him as Black. As Asian folks, there's Asian Jesuses. You can go around the globe and you'll find Jesus depicted to look like the people that are depicting him.
But historically, Doc, white people, Black people have never. I do agree with you. There are sections or factions of Black people that do more or less present God as Black. I do agree with that, but it's only minute. But by and large, in most churches in the South or in the North or wherever, he was always depicted as a white man.
Well, yes, I agree with that. And I think America has a specific problem that I think exacerbates this issue that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so I would agree with that. And I think other places in the world, I think that may not have the same sort of history. I don't think that there's the same. I don't think you're muddy. We end up with sort of muddy in the water with some of these other issues, some historical, racial issues that this country's had. But I'll tell you, a lot of the sort of racial stuff and using the Bible to brainwash people, all that stuff, that's all Protestantism. That stuff is all post-Protestant Reformation. All of that, slave masters quoting stuff out of context to try to subdue the slaves, all that stuff is Protestantism. And so I think you can make an argument that Protestantism is the white man's religion, as it were. But I don't think that you can make the argument that Christianity is the white man's religion. I
see your point. I don't know enough about the conjecture, Doc, between Protestantism and also orthodoxy. I know there's always been a chasm between Protestants and Catholics. I don't know about the Orthodox, but some say that Catholicism is tied into paganism. But that's another story. That's another topic. But your points are well taken. And you know I respect you. You're my brother. I respect you 1,000%. But many don't see the tide changing, Doc. Many see the world going into a dark crescendo. And the thinking errors of modern women are always posited on no one can judge me. Do you see that getting worse, Doc, or do you see things leveling out? But before you answer that, let me send a shout out to the super chat, and then we're going to end this show in about 5 minutes. You guys have been awesome. Shout out to Jonathan Morgan for the $5 super sticker. He said the difference is inflicting the image of God onto slaves whose mind/culture you could control. Excellent point. But Doc, do you see things changing? Because there are differences between Protestantism. There are variants. There are subcultures within the Protestant church. There's still a chasm between Catholics and Protestants. I am a Protestant, but I don't know if Orthodox Christians and Catholics have to actually agree or they disagree. But that's neither here nor there. But back to point. Only God can judge me mantra. Do you see that getting worse? Do you see it getting worse?
Yeah. I mean, everything is going to get worse. Mm-hmm. It's going to get a lot worse.
Tell the audience why, Doc. Excellent point, but tell the audience why.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
The language in the Bible, and even what Apostle Paul believed, what the disciples believed, they believed that the world possibly would end in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. Okay, because of how bad things were getting, right? Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of prophecy in the Bible that speaks about wars and rumors of wars and strange weather patterns, earthquakes in diverse places, all kinds of stuff, and it's only going to get worse. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's no way that this gets any better.
Right.
And this idea that there's a heretical doctrine, this sort of rapture doctrine. Mm-hmm. Now, there will be a rapture, but we need to understand, and the early church believed that the rapture would be post-tribulation. So in other words, we would have to endure the rapture. I'm sorry, the tribulation, and the tribulation would either show us to be chosen or rejected based on our conduct, right? And then we would be raptured, right? So post-tribulation, as opposed to these pre-tribulation folks that have this view that somehow, magically, you're driving your car and then all of a sudden you get sucked up and the rest of the people stay on earth. And the people that stayed on earth were the ones mm-hmm. that did wrong. That's actually a pretty new, maybe over the last 40 years or something like that.
Well, some say it goes back to John Nelson Darby, and I'm a pre-tribulationist, and you might disagree with me, and that's fine. I love you as my brother, but some say it's John Nelson Darby. It's new. I don't believe it's new. I believe that the apostles taught it, but I'm not here to more or less debate about pre-tribulationism or none of that. Just hear me first, Doc, and then you can go ahead. Believe what you want to believe. I have friends that are pre-tribulations. I have friends that are mid. I have friends that are post, like yourself, and I love and respect you nonetheless. But at the end, we'll see who's right and who's wrong. It's one of those substantive issues that's not even worth debating about. Right. We do believe in the faith. We do believe in the tenets of the gospel, and whether you pre, mid, or post, okay. Only thing I can say is be ready. Somebody's right and somebody's wrong, and I'll leave it at that. If I'm wrong, then we'll go through it. But if you're wrong, then you'll be caught up with all the other saints. So it's just one of those issues that's not even worth arguing, debating about, because there's evidence that can say my view is wrong, but then there's evidence that can say that you are wrong, and I'll just leave it at that. But I do agree with you, Doc, that things are waxing worse and worse. And it seems like, Doc, that now folks don't want the truth. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, things are getting worse. They will get worse people are going to be less and less responsive to sound reasoning. I mean, you see that. I interviewed a pastor friend of mine. He was my pastor when I was in college, named Joel Brooks. He pastors a church in Kalamazoo called Stone Church. Church was called Christian Life Center when I was there. But anyhow, I interviewed him, and something that he said, it was something that I hadn't heard in the way that he put it. But, you know, this whole mark of the beast, the mark on the head and the mark on the hand, right? So he said that the mark on the hand will be about the way you think, and the mark on your hand will be what you do, right? So you'll be prevented from being able to buy and sell based on what you do and based on what you think. So in other words, it's cancel culture. That's what that's what the mark of the beast, in his estimation, that's what the mark of the beast is. And so he believes that cancel culture will become even more pernicious and more common than it is now, and more aggressive. And so people will have to, you know, they're going to have to, you know, put up or shut up. You know, if you're a Christian and you have Christian values, then you'll either have to suck those up and say, hey, well, I'll just act like I'm not a Christian, you know, or you'll have to, you know, you'll have to take the hit, which means you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade. You'll have to live out in the woods or something, you know. So I think that's interesting. And the whole, you know, don't judge me thing, that's totally taking stuff out of context, out of the Bible. That's not, matter of fact, Jesus tells us to judge. He says, you judge a tree by its fruit. I mean, he specifically tells us to judge. We are to judge, but we are not to condemn. And that's a separate issue, totally separate issue.
Right.
It, you know, if somebody is behaving in a way that is going to lead them to destruction, it is our responsibility to say something to them. You know, and a lot of what sounds like, you know, relentless, tough talk against, you know, many of the women in the Black community, it may sound like we like we don't care or we hate them, but no, we actually really care.
Right.
That's actually why we're saying that. And I think Black men are, we love Black women, and that's why we labor so, and why there's so much discussion on certain kinds of topics in the manosphere, is because there's a deep love. And the thing is that what they should be concerned about is if we stop talking about it altogether.
Right.
Because the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy.
It's indifference, right? Apathy, right. I agree with you 1,000%, man. I agree with you 1,000%. Turner, we're about to end the stream. Dr. Thunder, man, we had an awesome show today earlier, man. I really appreciate you popping in. What would you like to say as a closing comment, on Turner?
The biggest thing is that, well, first of all, I don't see this turning around in my lifetime, as far as, you know, the way that we have to go based upon what God, in the direction where God would like us to go. But in the meantime, I think that we really, really have to take a good hard look at ourselves. We have to, you know, it's time for, you know, self-inspection, and you have to look at yourself and say, is this really, really right? And your spirit will well up if it isn't, if it is or isn't. And you have to first judge yourself. You have to say, hey, am I doing right? Is what I'm doing prosperous, not only for myself, but for other people? Am I hurting, you know, number two, just so I can be number one? And we have to begin to look at it, I believe, from that point. And then we have to reevaluate, and we have to reconnect our relationship with God. Very, very important. It's been taken out of our schools, been taken out of our homes, been taken out of our way of life, and we have to get back to that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Doc, the closing comments, brother, and thank you for coming in. You know, Doc, I'm glad you popped on because I was going to bring you on. I actually had thought about bringing you on as a guest, so you came in right in time. But what are your closing comments, man, as we move forward, brother?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'll come on anytime you want me to, man.
Yes,
you know?
sir. No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I wanted to say a little bit of something about the show that we did earlier.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, again, thanks for you know, being a panelist on,
yes, sir.
on
all the honor.
On our case closed,
mm-hmm.
which is our 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Ike and I, it's our show, and we go back and forth between his channel and my channel. And today's show was really great panel. Kosher clinician, Uncle Stu was on there, Donovan Sharp, Ramil Amir. We had Red Sings the Blues. We had LAR Movement. I'm forgetting folks. We had the Real Dana, and you know, it was a good conversation. So again, I wanted to thank you for participating, and we'll definitely have you back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anytime you'd like to come on the panel.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Now, with respect to the topic, I mean, yeah, I mean, the things are getting worse. They will continue to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the inherent problems with Protestantism, and I don't want to whip this too hard, because but one of the main issues is that you have like 30,000 Protestant denominations,
right?
Each of which have different takes on Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible itself says that there shall be no private interpretation of Scripture. Each denomination is participating, at least in part, in some sort of private interpretation of Scripture that is not in keeping with the continuity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not in keeping with some aspect of the early church.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's just, and so it's no wonder why you have a lot of these kinds of issues, with not just with respect to doctrine, but with respect to practice, not just with respect to practice, but with respect to oversight. What is necessary for you to become a minister? Apostle Paul, for a period of 3 years after he was blinded,
mm-hmm.
he didn't preach at all. He was
right.
blinded. He was learning for 3 years before he did anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not the way that modern Christians conduct themselves. As
mm-hmm.
soon as they get saved, they think they're supposed to be in the pulpit.
Right.
And in many churches,
I agree with that.
And in many churches, they go directly to the pulpit. So it's no wonder.
Mm-hmm.
It is no wonder why so much misinformation. This whole anybody can preach. We're all pastors. And there is something true about this whole idea of the priesthood of all believers. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the same as to say that everybody should be in the pulpit,
mm-hmm.
and anybody can preach.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to study to show yourself to be approved.
Right.
Not I have a revelation, and that's not enough.
Right.
And
right,
the Holy
right,
Spirit, the Holy Spirit told me that's not enough either, because everybody says the Holy Spirit told them. So you have to have some sort of tangible something, or else this kind of stuff is just going to continue to spiral even more and more out of control. What we know that's going to happen anyway. So, right. So, go ahead.
I don't know if I do agree with you. I think, by and large, you're 1,000% correct. I'm not saying I don't believe in all situations. I do believe in some. I don't believe in all situations you have to go to seminary in order to be part of the ecclesia. But also, I do agree with you that too many say they got a word and they're lying, and they start in these storefront churches as well. Some of God's greatest generals, they were just common men. You look at some of the apostles and some of the disciples, they were average men. They were carpenters. They were, whatever. They never went to seminary. But
okay, so here would be my pushback against the argument about the disciples and apostles. Okay,
right.
I'll give you a pass if you were learning from Jesus.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Fair enough. That's a fair point. Fair enough.
But
I was thinking about that too. Right.
Yeah, but once you get past that, you'll notice, and even like I said, in the case of Apostle Paul, 3 years, and that's actually where that whole 3 years of seminary comes from, is from looking at Apostle Paul. And this dude was brilliant. He was certainly an Old Testament scholar, but he still had to sit down for 3 years before he could do anything. So yeah, and again, I'm not going to I don't mean to whip the Protestants too much. I think all of us could take some whipping.
Right.
Honestly.
Right. Well, if you look at this, the centurion, my point is God can use a donkey or a jackass if it's for his glory. He'll use a common man.
That's true.
He's done it several times throughout history. But however, I don't think orthodoxy and more or less going to seminary always make you an agent of the gospel, because sometimes those that go to seminary are too technical and they tend to spiritualize the gospel. And I do agree that always those just saying, I got a word, I think you got to have a healthy combination of both. I do believe that there are some people that God called and you can just tell they were born for it. But that's where we tend to separate, like you talked about earlier, the phenomenological argument, and some will posit that everything has to be through empiricism or tangible evidence. But no, there are things that supersede the tangible and the physical, and that's where the faith movement come in, where certain aspects of spirituality supersede that which is tangible. So we got to take all things in retrospect and take all things within consideration to form a more cogent picture. But I think when we tend to go more to the right or more to the left without seeing some gray within the minutia, we become slaves of our own ignorance. Let me send a special shout out to my man James Turner for that $10 super sticker.
That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Great show. Thank you, James Turner. That's a deal, right? And shout out to my man Andrew Baker. Much love and respect to Andrew. He always show love. And once again, that's another deal, right, man? I appreciate it. Doc, love you, brother. We're gonna sign off, man.
That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
I'm gonna look at the Jedi Master. But I do agree with you, brother. We all can say we're living in very turbulent times. The times of our generation, Doc, are gone. You and I are from the class of 90 and 89 when the world was radically different. But we're going into a dark hole. We're going into a negative crescendo. We're going into a dark vortex. And you can feel the vortex pulling us more and more in. And I don't think until we get back to those things to the right and righteous, I don't see it getting any better. I don't see it getting better in our lifetime, man. I just don't see it, and it's okay. You gotta be on the ship of Zion.
I don't think it'll be better until the second coming.
Right, I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. Until the second coming in the millennial kingdom, I agree with you 1,000%, man. But anyway, brother, get you some rest. I know it's about 10:23 out there in Ohio, right?
11:23, bro.
Oh, you Eastern time. I'm sorry. I thought you were Central time, man. But anyway, man, we're going to sign off, man. Much love and blessings. Thank you to everybody, to the brothers. This has been another good show. This just came up from the top of my head, man. Only God can judge me. Yes, Lord. That's what the creativity. Yes, Lord. That's where the creativity come in, man. So
yes, Lord.
It's been a great show, man. And we're going to sign off. And thank you, Dr. Thunder, for coming in. And we'll do it again, man. If you need me, just let me know, and I will pop in and make it happen. Okay, be well.
All right, man.
Are you a victim of brokenness and despair? A broken man is a hopeless man, and a hopeless man is a very dangerous man. Many times, many of you young men that are listening come from homes that are very toxic and very dysfunctional. And because of that, many of you have deferred your power in many ways to the point it's led over into your social life, and many times led over into your relationships. If you guys are dealing with mental health pathologies, conscious and unconscious, come see me at kosherclinician@gmail.com. That's kosherclinician@gmail.com. It's important that you deal with your mental health in order to be a better person for yourself, your loved ones, and also your community. But because mental health is often stigmatized, many of you often suffer in silence. Don't be a victim in silence. And see me once again at kosherclinician@gmail.com. And I need you guys to remember this. If it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. There are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become an optimized male. And male mental health is one of those elements that's paramount to the functioning of a man. Be well.
In the morning, you got me up all cause you need to talk. So 4 in the evening, wanna break up, say that you've had enough. I'm tired of talking, again and again, argue about everything. You are my darling, let's kiss and make up, I know you wanna touch. You call me every night, call me every day, I just wanna get you alone now. Trust me when I say